On this week's episode of Friend Code, new Pokemon Sword and Shield information, the Game Boy celebrates its 30th anniversary, and these two went to EVO and are going to talk about it. Hello everyone, I'm Michael Damiani. This week, I am joined by Ash Paulsen of GameXplain.
Hello, thanks for having me back. I'm always happy to be here.
And always a pleasure. And Matt Simmons of YoVideoGames.
Yep, hey, thanks for bringing me in on this.
Yeah, good stuff. As you heard in the beginning of the show, the top of the show, we're going to talk about some EVO stuff. And
yeah.
I love talking about EVO. I haven't been in a few years, but I'm really excited to hear about how it was this year. But before we get there, and before we get into our different topics, just a little bit of opening house cleaning really quick. I just want to give an update that the new show graphics are in the works right now. They will be ready in the very near future. I can't wait to roll those out, so look forward to those in a future episode. But before we get to EVO, you two, something happened this week. Nintendo dropped some new Pokemon Sword and Shield information. And I want to start there with how they handled this. It wasn't a direct.
Right.
It was done through social media this time. They did have a 2-minute video. And I'm kind of curious how you feel about them doing it in this kind of smaller format versus doing calling it a direct. They didn't call it a direct. It's just here's new information. How do you think that works? And do you think we get more of this kind of small, this slow trickle of information as we hit the launch of the game?
It definitely makes more sense from a production standpoint. It's faster. It's probably cheaper. In terms of if they're going to have a lot of small news drops, I think that makes more sense. But I do think it's less hype. Just having a video appear on the channel, and I actually would mirror that with the recent Sakurai's recent Hero overview right before Hero released. It wasn't the usual mini direct, where he talks to us, pre-recorded. It was like this weird live stream, and it was fine. It wasn't bad, but it didn't feel as hype when just having him kind of talk casually about Hero. I'm being spoiled. I like those prepared presentations, but again, I get it. It's much more direct and much cheaper, I would say, and easier to just do an off-the-cuff presentation like that.
It's been a weird MO, I think, for Nintendo this year, because this is not necessarily the first time they did something like this, but I feel like it's mostly this year where they've had these little snippets. So, we're going to have a video later today or later this week, and they're doing it right now with Astral Chain, where they're like, hey, here's a little combo video throughout the month. It's not a direct, it's just little snippets, which is, it's a weird 50-50 for me, because on the one hand, I like getting little, gameplay segments. I like seeing more of these games rather than just in, the direct every 3 months. 3-4 months, whatever it may be. But at the same time, you do lose a little bit of the fever, of stuff. Because when it's in a direct, people are really excited. Everyone's amped for it. And then there's of course, there's usually more production value put into a direct. So there's a lot more, just I guess general word hype going into it. But yeah, when Sakurai's talking about just Hero just at his desk, and then the Pokemon thing was we're talking about here. It's here's just some footage put together for it, not super splashy. I mean, I think if you're a big fan of Pokemon or Smash Brothers, obviously I am, and Astral Chain, it's I'm going to eat it up no matter what.
Right.
But I do think there's a risk of some of this stuff getting lost.
That's a good point there, because that's what I was going to get at, because you brought up Astral Chain. And I think Pokemon is a game that I think it affords these kind of smaller information dumps like we just had, and it'll gain traction. Whereas Astral Chain, I'm kind of worried that it's getting a little bit lost. I feel like that game deserves and needs a dedicated direct.
Oh, absolutely.
All that information in a focused direct, especially this month, would do the game wonders, and instead they were releasing, here's a combo video, here's an 8-minute overview video that they released early in July. It was a week ago, 2 weeks ago. We were watching it before Easy Living, getting set up for the day before, and I was like, did they just drop this out of nowhere? I was like, it's amazing. This is selling me more in the game, but they really could do more to kind of bring focus and put a spotlight on Astral Chain.
Well, there's a higher barrier of entry when you're just dropping videos like that, because the thing about directs is people know to tune in for directs because they're hype and you're going to get new game announcements. So even if you don't necessarily love everything you see in a direct, you're being exposed to it. So you're already watching it. So Astral Chain may not be something you may have looked at if you just see, oh, Astral Chain 8-minute overview, because you don't know what it is. But when you're already watching that direct, you're basically forced to see the trailer.
Yeah, that's a really good
and
point.
you're like, oh, yeah, like then you have no idea or no choice but to know whether you like it or not. And if you do, then you know to go check out the videos. But if not, if you didn't see that direct, then what's the impetus to go check out this game you've never heard of?
Exactly.
Yeah, that is the one really good thing about directs. Like, luckily, Astral Chain was announced in a direct.
Yeah.
So if the people who did see it while waiting for other stuff can go back to it. Another game I think that's going to benefit from that, like, is Panzer Dragoon. Like, it was in Nintendo's E3 direct, so a lot of people are aware of what that is now. Whereas if Nintendo had done what they did with Pokemon and just said, because they had that trailer in the direct, but then the company making the game itself uploaded a separate gameplay footage clip of it. But that didn't get a ton of views because it dropped at the same time, so no one knows what it is. Pokemon has the luxury of like, okay, we can announce this. And one thing Pokemon also has is that because Pokemon is Pokemon, you're gonna see what happened in that trailer in various ways. And one of the ways I saw was fan art of the new Pokemon, or someone started trending like something about Gene Simmons, from Kiss, and I was like, what? And I'm like, oh, and then it brought it back to me. Of course, yeah, because it looks kind of like the one Pokemon. Oh, I get it. So, in a weird sort of way, like I almost hear more about this direct stuff through fan art or other social media means because it's Pokemon, because it's so popular. But a relatively newer game may not have that luxury. When they do like small snippet updates, if it's not Pokemon, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are definitely good points, and it's interesting. I think Nintendo, as much as they have gotten their stuff down to not quite almost a science with the directs, I think they have a lot to juggle as well, and I think what they've done has mostly worked, and they could still be figuring things out, but at the same time, there was actual information in this. I always love talking about like direct formats and stuff, and Nintendo's how they dole out information in their updates. And this update, we got a few snippets of new Pokemon Sword and Shield information, some new reveals. Starting with, they revealed that some of the classic Pokemon are going to get Galarian forms. This is funny because I always thought it was going to be called Galan form since it's the Galar region.
Right.
But it's Galarian. They want the Galarian. Okay.
Galarian almost sounds sci-fi in a way. It's
yeah,
weird.
I was like a Bowser Galactica.
Yeah.
It's like Galactica, Galarian. It's like, here we go.
Yeah.
So we got our first look at some Galarian forms, starting with Galarian Wheezing. And I think like everyone else here, when a lot of the allies saw it, dubbed it the Bong Pokemon.
See, I was like, oh, it's a top hat. That's cute.
Nice.
And then immediately after on Twitter, someone had drawn fan art of like Wheezing and the Pokemon trainers, and I'm like, oh, yeah. Now I can't unsee that.
That's funny.
It was funny because I had this pure image of it. Oh, it's a gentlemanly Wheezing. It was a big old top hat, stovepipe hat. And then immediately Twitter ruined that for me.
Right. And that's what's funny is like I'm usually the last one to have a wholesome interpretation of anything. I have a gutter mind, but I didn't even consider that. Now, of course, like it being a bong isn't necessarily gutter mind, but like I just didn't even consider that possibility. But now, of course, now that I think of that context, I'm probably going to go back and look at it and not see anything else.
Can never be unseen now.
Yeah.
I think they were obviously going for the smokestack because a lot of the RP behind the new Galarian Wheezing kind of supports that, and they give. I like this. For people who really care about the world building and kind of like the characteristics and traits of each individual Pokemon. On the Pokemon official website for each of these new Pokemon, they give a lot of more details about them and their personality, stuff like that. For Galarian Wheezing, so in addition to being a poison type, it's also going to be a fairy type. So I guess this for Pokemon people is a big deal because
wait, Wheezing is?
That's a weird type combo.
So they're adding they're adding a new type to it. So they're like dual types now. So I'm like, oh, okay.
How?
But it's I'll leave that to more like Pokemon aficionados. That stuff I don't really do a deep dive in, but like just want to point that out because you're going to hear more about that later.
Right.
But here's some of the RP behind it. Why is Galarian Wheezing the way it is? It emits purified air from the tops of its heads. So basically they're a purification system. It consumes polluted air and poisonous gases for sustenance. And in the air and gases it absorbs will have the toxins removed before being spewed out again from the tops of Weezing's heads. And the toxins that are accumulated within Weezing's body form into concentrated poison gas clouds that leak out and drift around it. And they use that as like a weapon in battle, essentially. So they basically take the gaseous, toxic air, purify it, send out the purified air, and then use the toxins as an attack. And that's how they function here.
It almost sounds a little bit self-defeating because you're spewing out purified air, but you're also spewing out poisonous air. So you're not really helping the air quality that much.
It's like you're helping the environment, but then you're using that against like other Pokemon, like
thereby hurting the environment again.
Yeah, it's like interesting choice there.
Yeah,
it's super weird. It's almost like it barfs out clean air, but then it excretes poison at the same time. So it's kind of like, okay, what a weird interesting thing. But it's I don't know. It's kind of, again, sort of cute, kind of funny how they have these reasons for what it is and what it does, rather than just, hey, it's a Pokemon and it has a big head. It's a cone head,
Like you can say all you want for like whatever corners you think they've been cutting and stuff for Pokemon. Like they do put some thought into like the story behind this. That's kind of nice. Yeah. They also, in these next set of Pokemon reveals, they revealed how older forms will have a new evolution step. So the example they gave this time was the Galarian form of Zigzagoon.
Yeah, yes. Zigzagoon, yeah.
So it is it's normally a normal type. It will also now be a dark type on top of that. So it just looks a little different from its normal form in visual appearance, but it will evolve like a normal Zigzagoon into a Linoon, but a Galarian Linoon now. And it also inherits the dual type traits as well. But here is where the RP stuff gets a little funny about its evolved form. So a Galarian Linoon can reach speeds of over 60 miles per hour and can deliver devastating tackles and headbutts.
Right.
So I want to know what you think about a Pokemon traveling 60 miles an hour and then hitting another Pokemon.
So it's like a cheetah with a helmet on.
Yeah. I mean, in the world of Pokemon, that actually seems relatively tame. Because if you really go back and look at all the Pokedex entries, living in the world of Pokemon would be a terrifying day-to-day experience.
Yeah, I remember, I used to work in education. And I didn't keep up with Pokemon very much, like in the later series. And then, like, they added in the Pokedex, they started adding size charts, to how much does this Pokemon weigh? And they actually like showed it in comparison to your trainer. And I'm like, so there's a whale in there? They're like, yeah, there's a whale. Like, throw a whale out, like a whole whale.
Yeah.
I mean, the world of Pokemon in general, if you really break it down, it just makes so little sense, and just there's so many different Pokemon coexisting that all have like catastrophic levels of damage they can do. And it's
all good fun and sport. Yeah, and for kids.
Right. Yeah. As these 10 to 12-year-olds are going out on their own and traveling the world and don't have to worry about any stranger danger, anything like that. It's so weird.
It's a perfect little world.
Yeah.
Yeah. It says like these attacks have enough destructive force to even knock a car away.
I love it.
It's like just get empower that.
It's funny because they have the Team Rocket or the Team whatever in all the Pokemon games, but like they're so lucky they don't have a Team Umbrella who's going to weaponize these things. Because I mean, like all I can sit there and think about is just like, like how would the military not be making BOWs out of all these Pokemon? It knocks over cars, and it's the size of a badger. Like, of course, it's basically a ground missile.
This line of think. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, I don't know each entry of Pokemon. Like, I don't remember all the storylines all that well, even though I played them all. But I think I remember that Team Flare from Gen 6 kind of did a little bit of that. Like, they were trying to weaponize Pokemon. I think I may be misremembering completely.
I was going to bring up even like Detective Pikachu.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
World, like they kind of go with that direction.
I mean, in a way, but I'm thinking like way darker.
Yeah,
sure,
like
of course.
It could go.
Yeah,
I'm thinking way
darker.
too dark, for a Pokemon. But I'm just like, you put that in the game. You presented this. It can do this amazing, incredible, destructive thing, and yet I'm like, and how is it not like just part of the everyday military or whatever all the time. Like this, like you said, this world would be terrifying to live in.
Yeah.
This would not be a place I'd want to visit. Like there's game worlds I want to live in, and not Pokemon.
I like
That's
this now.
for sure.
Yeah, I like this now because in our monthly Q&A, every now and then we get asked like, "What game world would you love to visit?" and stuff. And it's like, I'd be like, Pokemon would come to mind because it'd be cute little cuddly Pokemon. But after this conversation, it's like, if someone ever, or one of the other allies ever calls out and be like, actually, let me tell you about some of the Pokemon in this world here.
Yeah.
These two Pokemon, their evolutions, that they've been around for a while, and their Galarian forms, different appearance, different attributes. But the Galarian forms will now have a third step in the evolution change, a brand new Pokemon, Obstagoon. It is so there was a note at the top of the page that explains how more than just there'll be more Galarian forms of Pokemon that will go through a third evolution stage, essentially. So living in a unique environment of the Galar region, some regional forms of Pokemon have developed unique evolutions unseen in any other region. So I think that might get some people excited for that, seeing like their old Pokemon kind of redesigned for this game, but also getting a new evolutionary step.
Yeah, this is like the bipedal one, right? Where he looks like...
Yeah, like his hands crossed with the claws. Yeah.
Well, and this was a concept that was introduced in Pokemon Sun and Moon with last generation, and I think what's cool about how they're expanding in this is, I might be wrong on this, but just thinking out of the top of my head, I think all the Alolan forms of past Pokemon were all Gen 1. And that's cool. I mean, people love Gen 1. I may be, aware, I think they're all Gen 1, and that's like the iconic set, right? But I do think it's cool that now we're going post-Gen 1 with some of these new forms.
That's a good point. Thanks for clarifying that. I didn't know that, actually.
Where did the Zigzag Badger come from?
Oh, man, I'm so, like, if Derek was here, he would know all this, but I think Gen 3?
I want to say Gen 3 because I was looking up at Bulbapedia. That sticks out. Gen 3 and Gen 6 were brought up in the entries I was looking at. So
okay, I think Gen 3.
We love corrections here. We love corrections. Let us know how ill-informed we are about Pokemon. But that's not like the only thing. Yeah, as you mentioned, this isn't something completely new to the series, but seeing them break into a different generation, this is something nice to see them keep doing. But this next thing, I'm not sure if it's ever been seen before. Form-changing Pokemon, where some Pokemon can change their form often because of the effects of certain items or their own ability. They don't simply change the appearance of Pokemon, but it'll change their attributes, essentially. And the example that they gave, is Morpeko, which is an electric type by default, and it uses an ability called Hunger Switch, which triggers Hangry Mode,
I love that.
which changes it to a dark type. So it goes from electric to dark type. And its move Aura Wheel, its properties change from like this electric looking like spinning wheel to like a dark attack, essentially. It's like, interesting.
Yeah, I had my first thought of that Pokemon. I was like, oh, it's like a cosplayer, They're electric at the beginning of the day and then they get hangry because they're in a costume all day. Like, 'cause if you, like, people who've been around conventions and cosplay enough, they know exactly what I'm talking about. You go from, I'm jazzed and enthused, to by the end of that day, at the end of that photo shoot, you're like, I am hangry.
Is this like the Snickers thing? Like,
yes,
Snickers?
yeah.
Okay,
that's exactly what I was for normal people. It's a Snickers like thing. I was just thinking like, this is like being in like costume because I played Dr. Doom, all those years ago and stuff for Sesame and stuff.
Sure.
So it's just like, the beginning of the day, you're pumped and jazzed. At the end of the day, you're like, you're just dying. Hunger. So I was like, I thought it was a funny, cute Pokemon. I'm like, I can relate to this thing.
I will say that I don't think form changes are new. I don't know if it's the exact same concept, but you can even see this in Smash Ultimate with the spirits. Like if you evolve, I think it's Shaman. Shaman has its own form, and then there's also like Landorus and Thunderous. There's like land form and something else form. And
is it through evolution it changes?
That's what I'm not completely sure.
Because this isn't an it was obviously it's not evolution. It's just a ability it does, and it can change back and forth. So I'm trying to remember. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I was trying to quickly search for this, but unfortunately, like, I'm also not the biggest Pokemon expert, so it doesn't come to mind. But
I'm a little shocked the fact that this is new.
Yeah, the fact that they're making this a big deal, it means it's going to be more prominently featured. So it's not like a one-off or just a few Pokemon. This might be a more common thing in the Galar region here. Or it is something that, is a little bit on the newer side. Like, without having to evolve the Pokemon, it stays, it can change types.
Because like, you go all the way back to Eevee, and, it has, like, all these different, things it can evolve into.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, it's permanent once you do that, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. You can't, like, that's the thing. I think this ability I think it's just another way to add another layer to battles, essentially. That like it's something now, especially when it comes to human battles, that you have to account for this now. It just adds another layer you have to like deal with to make it more like flexible and more varied.
So the concept itself isn't different, but the process by which it happens might be.
Yeah, I think that might be the best way about putting it.
Yeah.
So,
but that's only really unique to certain types. Like it's the Hangrymon or whatever his name is. I already forgot.
Oh,
I just it's called Hangry mode.
Like just like hungry but angry. Hangry mode.
Right. Hungry, angry. I think it seemed to me like that was unique to that Pokemon. It's not going to be like a lot of old Pokemon will have this ability to change types. It's kind of unique to this one in a way. So it's not like you're going to get this weird meta where someone's going to have a team of Pokemon and all of them are going to have the ability to change type during battle. It's mostly like if he puts out this thing, then you know that, okay, that thing can go from electric to dark, I believe, was the other one.
Yeah, electric to dark.
So it's like, okay, if he has that one particular Pokemon, I know he can bounce between those two. It's not like he's going to have a whole team.
It's not going to be,
They do say some at the top of the page, meaning implying it's more than one. But I wonder if there'll be like you do online battles, or if you go to like tournaments, will be a restriction, like only one.
Right.
They're called dual types, I guess, is the term they were using there.
Dual types and like the dual type.
Not dual type. Sorry. Never mind. I got that wrong. I apologize.
Okay.
But like this type of Pokemon being able to do this, they might be a restriction on how many you can have in your party.
And how
like the rule against like legendaries
also,
and stuff like that.
How often can it switch back and forth? Can it do it just as long as it's alive?
That's not explained.
You know?
Yeah, that's not explained in here, so we don't know until you get to try it out.
There's going to be a lot of new, not new, but a lot of concepts for tournament organizers to really get through in this, because you got Gigantamaxing, you got Dynamaxing, you got the form changes, you got all this stuff, and but of course, to be fair, stuff like Dynamaxing, it's really just a new coat of paint for things like Z-moves, Mega Evolutions, and
I had people at E3 who played the Pokemon demo for me, and they don't play a ton of Pokemon. They know about it enough, but it was just like even people who are only tiny bit aware of how Pokemon works, even they were kind of like, it just kind of seemed like basically a new way of saying what they've already done. Like it's just
that's totally what it is.
They get big. It's kind of something we've already seen. Now they're just big.
Yeah,
this has been one of the loudest voices for criticism against this game has been that it's just a new coat of paint on old stuff for a lot of these things.
I thought it was trees.
But also if you're a Pokemon fan, like, don't you kind of? I mean, it's like being a Mega Man fan. Like, you come because the formula works, and they don't change it up from game to game that much, and you go because it's familiar. I'm not saying that fans who want something new are wrong. But I just feel like to be that surprised that they're not going in a completely new direction is a little weird.
This is a very good internal debate for, like, I think all video games, especially when it comes to franchises. It's like people loved a game for what it was. If it was successful and popular, right? Obviously, if it's a bad game from the start, it's a bad game from the start. But a game like Pokemon, people love Pokemon for what it is, right? They don't love it for what it's not. So you have this, when you get however many games, what are we, 8 generations in now at some point? We're this far in, and it's like, okay, how many people want it to be drastically different? How many people are just want it to be as it is, but just a little bigger, a little prettier, whatever. So it's a really hard thing to juggle. And I'm always kind of like, I always look back to, say, Devil May Cry 1, because it started as Resident Evil 4, and it just got too different. So they said, hey, let's make a new IP, which I feel is maybe, and Pokemon has lots of spinoffs.
Right.
They've slowed down on them a lot, because you don't see like Pokemon Ranger and the other ones they used to have mystery dungeons as much. But it's like, I feel like if there were going to be an option for like drastic changes beyond getting big, Dynamax or whatever, like maybe that's something more like a Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness kind of idea. Maybe that would be the better solution. If you wanted something drastically different. I don't know. I'm spitballing here. But
I like, as someone who's actually reviewed these games as well, like this comes up a lot. Like, how much do you go after them for giving you more of what, like, the same, but it's also like, what are the expectations? It's not going to be a revolutionary new game and still be Pokemon. Like, I feel like there's this unrealistic expectation sometimes about, it needing to undergo a massive transformation. And then is that really what people want? Like, will it be too different and will be unrecognizable in that form versus, are they doing too much the same and getting away with it? Like, it's this back and forth tug of war that's gone on for a long time now. And I think it just kind of was amplified by the fact that a lot of games on the Switch this generation and the first party franchises from Nintendo underwent some significant overhauls, like with Breath of the Wild, the stuff they did in Odyssey, even Fire Emblem like Three Houses recently. And they look at Pokemon like, this is the first console one, like, here we go, what are the big changes? Oh,
they get big.
Yeah, they get big.
Right, but I have to say, like, I mean, no, like, here's the truth. Literally no matter what they do, people are going to be angry.
Oh.
They literally cannot make everybody happy, and no matter what they do, people are going to rage. Like,
of course.
Yeah. I will say that I think their biggest marketing and PR mistake with Sword and Shield so far has nothing to do with Poke Exit or the National Dex or anything. I think it's that they showed Yamper too early, because there's literally nothing that could ever be better than a corgi Pokemon with a heart-shaped butt. Like, you just can't.
That should have been like their last reveal. That's what they should have.
It's all downhill from there. Like, you can't. Yeah.
Well, you see, I was fine because I actually didn't know about this Pokemon existing.
Nice.
So
Okay.
you just said it.
So he's
spoiled.
actually at E3, and you can Dynamax it, so it's a giant
Maybe I
corgi
did see it.
electric-type
Yeah, I
corgi.
think you've
remember
seen
seeing
it
a
and you just
corgi.
didn't know it
It's
was going.
great.
Really?
It's great. I love it.
Besides new Pokemon reveals, we got some new story-related reveals, new rivals, the new team reveal. So you got two new rivals that they introduced. I apologize to get this name wrong because I didn't double check how it said. But is it Bead or Beady?
I wasn't sure. Bead sounds more.
Yeah,
like it might be
I would.
Yeah.
I feel like it should be Bead, but if I'm wrong, I apologize. They have joined the Gym Challenge, and they got their endorsement from Rose, who's the chairman of the Galar Pokemon League. So if you don't know, the only way you can get into the Pokemon Gym Challenge is if you are endorsed or have like a letter of recommendation, basically authorizing you to participate in this. It was their big reveal in their last video about how the rules of this challenge is going to work. And it's just their rival. Nice design and stuff. I liked it.
I'm actually really happy to see Bead, because one of the things I've been complaining about recent Pokemon games is that your rival has gone from being an abject douchebag like Blue to being nice guys. Like, they're your friends, they're your rivals, but like they just want to pal around with you, and that can be a cool kind of rival. But it's more fun to want to beat your rival when they are a jerk. And this guy Bead seems like he's gonna play that role. Like, I couldn't stand Hao in Sun and Moon, because he was just kind of just derpy and just a nice guy, which is fine, but not for a rival character, in my opinion. It's kind of fun to have a rival that you do really want to beat. I just felt bad for Hal the whole time.
That's a good point. Yeah, a lot of the ones I've played recently, they've been too friendly and stuff.
Right. So I'm glad to see the return of the douchey.
I'm surprised, because I didn't really play Sun and Moon that much. I didn't realize he was such a bro or whatever.
Oh, it's not a bro. He's just kind of bumbling along,
just kind of like a happy-go-lucky.
Yeah, kind of happy. And that's cool, but like
because I remember was it Silver and Blue or Gary, as I remember.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just they were just kind of jerks,
Oh yeah, Gary was here. Ash was a loser. Yeah,
it's like you were
so good.
You were like so happy. Like, in fact, it was almost to a point where like, how did you beat the Elite Four? You know, when you get to them, it's like, because if you're playing it right, you whop the Elite Four. That's like the midpoint of the game, really.
It was What's funny is I think I didn't ever quite completely finish Sun and Moon, but I think that Hal ends up being the champion that you fight.
Oh,
and that's what's funny is like, how did this guy, this bumbling guy, how did he beat the Elite Four and become the champion?
Incredibly lucky.
Yeah.
How?
Here's my question, because there was a Bead and then there was the other
Marnie.
character.
So the other one is Marnie.
Right.
I just want to. Was this a thing where it's different between versions?
There's nothing about. So for these two, I didn't read anything about this.
Yeah.
Because you were making a reference to last time, the two new gym leaders.
Because there were two.
Because there'd be different gyms in each version.
There was.
These are Marnie is, I believe, another rival, but I think it's bigger because they're tied to the new Team Yell, essentially.
Is it like a Team Rocket thing?
Yes. So Marnie is their Pokemon, kind of like their buddy Pokemon, is the Morpeko.
Yeah.
So the one we talked about that can switch. And again, she's also trying to become the champion. So her backstory is she has a lot of passionate fans, and she's very kind of like calm and calculated in her battles. But the part about her fans, these crazed fans are now the new team. This is your new enemy team, Team Yell, a group of troublemakers who seem to appear wherever the gym challenge takes you, and they attempt to get in your way at every opportunity.
This is the most beautiful coincidence ever. Because this is, it was funny when I first, posted on Twitter about Team Yell. I wasn't a fan. I'm like, it's not real cool. And like, I love Team Skull. I'm like, to follow up Team Skull is really tough. But then various fans pointed out to me like, hey, no, Team Yell is just a toxic fan base. And I'm like, this is brilliant. This is brilliant.
There's a little meta.
It's so good. Given current events,
meta commentary.
It's so good.
It totally is.
I love it.
So is she like a Giovanni, or is she a rival? Like, because it's usually just one rival per game, correct?
Well,
no, there have been a couple in Gen 6. I think.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
7.
They did point out there's one line of a subtitle in one of the images that say, they get rowdy, they do all this stuff, but they seem the only time they will subside is when Marnie finally asks them to. So it does imply that she has a point where she's like, this is not acceptable. You need, to call this out. I'm like, oh, they're also doing that part of it where some people should call it. Oh, I see where they're going with this.
And I mean, what's funny is it had to be a coincidence because, with how lengthy game development is, Team Yell had to have been designed and themed and, concepted out
years ago.
Way before all this not nonsense, but all this really crazy drama and vitriol happened with the national decks. And
the trees.
And so I don't know. It had to be an amazing coincidence, but especially with the rhetoric today, I love seeing toxic fan bases get kind of called out and just kind of parodied.
It's I think it's more toxic than it's been probably ever.
Yes.
But, this trend has been going on for a while, so I think it was more of a general
and not
commentary.
Just in Pokemon. You see it in everything. Smash, all that. Yeah.
And especially when it comes to Nintendo, they've had this for decades where they've dealt with this.
It's such a Harvey Dent moment, too. You either your franchise either dies a hero like F-Zero, or you see us live long enough to become the villain.
Really good point. Really good point.
That's great. They didn't give too much information about them. Like, I feel like some of the other gym leader reveals had some more information about them. Team Yell was probably the bigger focus of anything.
Oh yeah,
but they did cover one last thing. It wasn't in the video, but it was on the website. One new bit of information is about Poke Jobs.
Right.
And in the Galar region, we already knew about this part. It's very common for people in Pokemon to work together. Like, they've been saying this from the start. And their RP is that many corporations and universities request the help of Pokemon through what are known as Poke Jobs. So you can check at Pokemon centers, you can go to Ratomi's and check what kind of job postings they have. And you can also accept them from other places. They said, like, from your boxes directly. And the Pokemon you send out will help the job. They'll gain experience. And certain jobs will be better suited for different types of Pokemon. And they said, like, there might even be rare item rewards for doing these. And Simmons and I were kind of talking about this on the drive in, because I said, like, it's kind of like the newest thing. I kind of took this as, like, the old system. So in my defense, I didn't play Sun and Moon. Okay. So I don't know if this was something like this was introduced before. But my understanding of, like, the older games is that there would be that NPC in that house is like, oh, leave your Pokemon here that aren't your 6.
Yes.
And we will play with them and they'll get experience. And this is like a whole new kind of like meta game, I feel like, where the Pokemon you're not necessarily going to use as your primary 6 in your party, you're going to send them out to do, like, this is how they're going to level up. And and maybe there'll be rewards that can help benefit like my team. And I see just them trying to address maybe a weaker spot that some people have had issue with in the past. I don't know if that's a good take and I'm missing the mark because maybe they disliked this before.
I don't think so, as far as I know, but at the same time, this feels like a half step because, I mean, this just reminds me of, like, the guild missions in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, right? Like, there's nothing interesting about them. You send your Pokemon out, you forget about them, they come back and you get experience. And this is a really, really random comparison, but I'm thinking of, like, the job listing boards in a game like Mega Man Battle Network 2 or 3 where they're all side quests. So you accept a job and then you go talk to an NPC who appears somewhere in the world and it's a whole quest.
And now this is not what this is going to be.
Right, that's not what it seems like it is. And now I get it. Pokemon is a much more robust content-rich franchise than Battle Network was. Just, they only had 6 games. We have like 8 gens now and like 1,000 Pokemon, but not all of which are going to be in the game. But I can see why they couldn't do that for every job. But it's just it doesn't interest me.
Yeah, this goes also. I mean, you pointing it out from Xenoblade Chronicles, the guild missions. I mean, this concept's been around. I think it got popularized in the 2 generations ago, or last generation, the 360 PS3 generation, like Assassin's Creed. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's like send your assassins on like these like missions and stuff, and then every game started doing that. And it's maybe this is them actually playing catch up. Like, oh, we could have been doing this with all the you've been catching all these Pokemon. What are you doing with all of them?
We even saw this.
Around? Yeah,
we even saw this in games like Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker and Metal Gear Solid 5, in all its forms.
It's this
it
meta
just
game.
never is interesting.
Yeah, it's just something like. Oh, it's like, it feels like a daily or weekly type thing. Like it's part of a grind to keep you coming back. Like keep sending them out.
It's not like PTSD where it's like trying to max out Ursula and Xenoblade 2.
Oh man,
it's all mercenary mission based, so you literally just have to.
Jeez.
And like someone told me about that, I'm like, nope, never leveling her up.
It's funny. We even just saw this added to Smash Ultimate in a recent patch where you can send your spirits out on these. But what's stupid about that implementation is that you have to stay on the screen.
Yes.
While you wait for them, that's the dumbest.
Because the old thing's about go explore the cave or whatever with Linebacker. Or
you don't have to be
you
around
go
for
away.
that.
Come back in 6 hours, 10 hours, or whatever.
Yeah.
Now it's like no, that's the worst.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
I hate that. That's no, not a fan of that at all.
Yeah,
but I mean, it was in the video, so I don't think it's like that big of a point. It's just something they're just adding in there.
This is more of like an eternal war of menu management to me. It's kind of like I'm playing through Fire Emblem right now, and the battles are great. Like I'm enjoying the battles, and then it's like all the Hogwarts stuff is like, it's mostly just menu management at the end of the day. Like, and for me, it's kind of like it kind of can drive me a little nuts. Even in really good games that have it. I think back to Matsuno and all his Evilist titles. That man loves menus. More than anything. Like, we could achieve world peace if everyone could learn to love each other like that man loves menus. If you've ever played, like, Tactics Original and Final Fantasy 12 and stuff, it's like, man loves his menus.
Way too many menus. That was actually one of the reasons I wasn't a big fan of Final Fantasy 12. So
right.
I know what you mean. One thing I will say before we move on is one of the cool lore things I thought I read, and I think it's the Zigzagoon, Linoon, and then the new evolution line. What is it? Whatever the new evolution's called, I can't remember.
Upsigun?
Yeah. That I think it was in that Pokédex entry or the description where they're saying like experts actually now think that this was the original like evolution, like the original line of, and I'm like, that's a cool bit of world building. Like, hey, we never knew this region existed, but this is actually the original line of this species, and I love stuff like that.
That's actually kind of neat.
It is, right?
In a way, because it actually. Yeah, it kind of like mimics real world a bit as well, where it's like you discover an offshoot of a species, and you're like, maybe the offshoot was like the origin, and then what we always thought was the standard is the branch. You know?
I love stuff like that.
So that actually could be kind of cool to discover in the game.
Yeah.
Hopefully stuff like that isn't all spoiled out before it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be way more Pokemon, so obviously you're not going to get all of it. But yeah, it's something I appreciate. And I was alluding to earlier that this type of information on the website and that's in the Pokédex, I'm happy for fans who like eat this stuff up.
Yeah.
It's just like a lot of thought put into it in a nice element. But as you said, about time to move on from Pokemon, as much as we enjoyed talking about Pokemon on the show. Because it was recently the 30th anniversary of the Game Boy, the original.
That hurts to say.
Yeah,
so much.
It does.
30 years, 1989.
I feel so old.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Where were you when Game Boy first came out?
When I was in Texas when it came out, but I didn't get it. Like NES. Like SNES and like Game Boy, I didn't get any of those when they launched.
Yeah.
Like NES came out like when I was like way too young. Like I couldn't even I was like baby or something like 85. Yeah, like 1 year old or something like.
Yeah.
But like.
Well, like with the NES, a lot of people think, it came out in '85. It test market launched in '85, like in New York, and maybe there's questionable.
Yeah, so
if
like
there was
we're talking
test
like
in LA.
'86. Yeah.
It really didn't hit most of America till '86, but Game Boy That was everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
immediately.
so, like I became cognizant of video games and like aware of an interest in them like around 89, 90.
Yeah.
Like that's when I was old enough. That's when I was like, oh, video games, cool. These seem kind of cool. I want to check them out. And like SNES was being advertised, Game Boy was being advertised, and NES was like already there. It seemed like, oh, it's been around forever. To like a little kid, it's like that's like ancient. You know, this has been forever. But Game Boy. It's very interesting, and I got a bunch of questions for you about some of your experiences with the Game Boy over the years, and these come from some of our patrons. So thank you again for all the patron questions you submitted. Our first one comes from Straw Hat Ninja.
Nice.
Greetings, allies, and glad to see Ash is back. The Game Boy was the first system I ever received, and I was blown away when I got Super Mario Land with it. And even though it's not the greatest game, I had a great time. I'd like to know, what was your first Game Boy game?
Well, actually, I was lucky enough to get the Game Boy really close to its launch. I think it was either a birthday or a Christmas present for me or something, but I was very lucky. I remember my dad took me to the Babbage's.
Oh,
it was Babbage's back then at the Thousand Oaks Mall. And so the Babbage's where we got the Game Boy, and I got, of course, Tetris, because that was a pack-in. Tetris, Super Mario Land, and I believe Alleyway.
Yeah,
I also got it. And I love that game. So those are my first three games, kind of a combination. I'm pretty sure I played Super Mario Land first, and then probably Tetris and Alleyway. But those are my first Game Boy games.
What about you, Simmons?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. Because I was there when Game Boy first came out. I didn't have it at launch. I have an interesting story because I first got a Game Boy within the first year. Probably. What had happened was this is a weird story. So my mother was babysitting, a neighbor's kid. That neighbor knew about marketing, was in marketing promotional stuff, and said, "Hey, there's this line of children's like toys ish and other stuff." And they're like, your son is young, maybe he could go do a couple of photos for these toys or whatever for promotional materials, and then get you get money from it. So I did that when I was a little kid, and then I so what do you get with my first paycheck? So at the time, this is 1990, and they're like, you give a kid $100, and it's like, which is a lot for a little kid in 1990, and like mom was like, oh well, you could buy a lot of stuff. I'm like, I know exactly what I want, and it was Game Boy.
Nice.
I knew exactly, and so. Yes, it was Tetris and Mario Land, and then because it was a little after launch, I was at a Kmart. I went there happy as it can be. I have all this money, and I bought the Kid Icarus.
Of Myths and Monsters.
Of Myths and Monsters.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing. I pretended I knew what it was. For forever, I just pretended I knew what I was doing in that game, and I really did. And it's like I basically, like every Star Wars fan in 1999, I pretended that I really loved this game.
Yeah.
And then eventually reality set in, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing. And,
right. Well, it wasn't a particularly good game anyway.
That's what I was getting at. Just like something weren't particularly a great movie. This was not particularly a great game.
Yeah.
So I ended up playing a lot more of Mario Land 1. And I kind of like Tetris, but I was kind of like, puzzle games really didn't do it for me.
Same here. Yeah.
For now I look back and I love Tetris, of course. And I did play a lot of Tetris with the link cable and the big giant.
Yeah. That was one of the few games. My mom got a Game Boy too, and that was one of the few games my mom would play with me, the big link cable.
Exactly.
Play
This was the only game on the Game Boy that my mom cared about. Was
and Dr.
Tetris.
Mario. She would play Dr. Mario with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, Mario Land was kind of the big one for me at the start. It was probably the first game I played. I think it's actually pretty good. But and we'll get into the other questions.
I agree.
They exponentially got better, or at least from 1 to 2, and is for sure.
I think what I liked about Super Mario Land, even back then, I kind of perceived it was that it felt almost like a weird, like you're having a weird dream about Super Mario Brothers, like the original, because it's like. It's familiar, but everything is slightly off. Like you jump on it's not even, they're not even Koopas in there, but you jump on a turtle and it explodes and you take damage. And it's like, what? Wait a minute, what is this about? And then you get a flower and you're like, oh, fireballs. No. What is this? I can only have one on the screen and it's a Super Ball. Like, I love that everything was slightly, off center. And that was a cool experience.
The vehicles, like submarine, airplane. Yeah,
right.
It was very different.
Yeah.
You could collect coins with the Super Ball too.
Yeah.
Right.
Which was interesting in a way as well.
Concept that would come back when you get like hit Koopa shells and stuff.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen, I don't know if we ever saw the return of like a 2D shooter type Mario stage until Super Mario Maker necessarily.
Right.
Oh,
which is really interesting because, when you go fight that second boss and then Tatanga at the end, it's like it's a full-on shooter.
Yeah.
You don't need to know any platforming. It's really a weird game, but I liked it. I'm trying to think of any other.
Yeah,
I feel like it was
might
Mario
have been,
Maker.
but like, that it was definitely atypical and wasn't seen very soon after.
But at the same time, even though graphically it was very basic, even for the Game Boy, it was because I didn't really know about the links, even though the links came out around the same time.
Oh yeah.
Reality is like I did not know you could cram a game of that caliber, or at least. It's a full-fledged video game with, I think it was like 20 worlds or so, or maybe 18, something like that. It was a lot of levels, or maybe not in that much. Maybe it was only 12, actually, now that I think about it. But anyways, point was it was a console-sized experience.
Oh, yeah.
On a little Game Boy cartridge, on a little, little Brick Boy. So, to me, it was a revolution at the time.
Yeah.
Because I was like, whoa, because my experience was with Tiger Electronics handhelds.
Oh yeah, totally.
Leading up to the Game Boy. So the Game Boy to me was a Cadillac or Rolls Royce of portable gaming. Not knowing that the links actually launched around the stem, and then later the Game Gear came out, and that's like, okay, well that's a Lamborghini.
Well, that was barely even a handheld because you had to basically play that thing connected to a wall outlet because they would chew through 6 AA or something in 2 hours. I will say one of my favorite examples of a Game Boy game that felt like a massive console-sized release, and it's a brilliant game, is Donkey Kong 94. That game felt like it just went on forever, but in a good way. Not that it felt like a slog, but that you just kept chasing Donkey Kong through all these increasingly dramatic environments.
That game tricked me because I thought it was just another one of those half-hearted arcade attempts. Like, it's like a little Space Invaders Centipede thing that they just kind of throw on the Game Boy. I'm like, okay, yeah, here we go. 25, 50 millimeter, or 50 meter, 75, and then all of a sudden. Like Donkey Kong runs away, and you're
so
like,
good.
Wait, what? There's like this world map, and you're like, excuse me?
And then you also saw the debut of what Mario wouldn't do yet again until Mario 64. You saw the backflips and the handstands. Like you didn't get that again until 3D context, which is pretty cool.
Definitely. Revere is one of the best games on that system.
Oh yeah,
and as you said, like even the Mario games improved over time. But our next question, I want to talk about some. Next question about some like underrated gems in the series, not the series, on the Game Boy. I apologize. Joe Halaska, hey allies. Whenever the Game Boy comes up, people inevitably mention the heavy hitters like Donkey Kong 94, Link's Awakening, Pokemon, Super Mario Land 1 and 2, Wario Land, etc. What game or games do you fondly remember as underappreciated gems in the Game Boy library? Love and respect.
I don't know if I can say for sure that they were underappreciated because I wasn't as tuned in to what other people were playing back then, of course. I was
a good point.
Like 6 years old.
As a kid, yeah.
But I have a lot of fond memories of playing Konami's, rest in peace, Konami's various licensed titles. Like, they made some really good games based on the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
Tiny Toon.
I cannot believe you said that. That was exactly what
really?
I was going to go
yeah.
with.
So my favorite.
I'm like, no, don't say Tiny Toons.
Oh, sorry. Well, then I'll focus on Turtles.
No, go for it. I do want to hear what you have to say about it.
Okay, well, I will say that my most vivid memories, I'm a huge Ninja Turtles fan. For those of you who know who my dad is, that has nothing to do with that. I actually like the Ninja Turtles separately. But I will say that the second game, I played the first 2 games probably 100 times as a kid. Like, Fall of the Foot Clan was the first game. Rough around the edges, not great. It was fine. It wasn't bad, not great. But then you get Back from the Sewers. Mm-hmm. And that game was bad ass. And it had a fantastic soundtrack. And it felt like a legit TMNT side-scrolling beat-em-up that you would play on NES. And I love that game to death. And then you got, the TMNT 3, was it like
Radical Rescue?
Radical Rescue.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting take on it. It was almost like a Metroidvania type or like a take on Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
which is really interesting.
Super
for the
weird because you
time.
had to start as Michelangelo and you had to like
Right.
find the other turtles.
Yeah.
Right,
it
and I
was
would say
so-
all three of those games were perhaps underrated. I don't know for sure, or underappreciated, I would say. But the second game in particular, I think, is one of the best platformers / beat 'em ups in the entire system.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was part two. Part two, Back from the Sewers, was like, wow, they really upped the. 'Cause, yeah, exactly like I said. We had Follow the Foot Clan because it was early on, and you're like, yeah, this is okay. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It actually had giant character sprites for the Game Boy at
Right.
the time, which
Oh
was a
gosh,
little
they were
weird.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But whatever, it was Ninja Turtles at the time. You didn't care.
Yeah, and what was cool about Fall of the Foot Clan was that it reproduced the '80s cartoon art really accurately. It felt like it
Really,
came
yeah.
straight from the cartoon.
Yeah.
While Back from the Sewers and Radical Rescue kind of did their own thing, which is
Yeah.
cool too. But I love all three of those games. However, those are my most vivid memories of Konami licensed games. So I'll let you take a point on Tiny Toons.
Yeah.
I played that on NES a lot as well.
So yeah, and they're different. That's
Right,
the thing.
very
It's
different.
Like, people probably see that Tiny Toon Adventures. It's just like I remember the NES game. Okay, so the Game Boy one, the first one was Bab's Big Break. It's completely
Right, that's what it was
It's a
called.
completely different game.
Yeah.
It had a really unique. It's somewhat early in the line. It was about 2 years after the system was out, but it had like this thing where you could press pause and switch characters on the fly, and the characters each had like a fruit based. Like Buster would throw carrots. Plucky would have these pineapples which would bounce and ping like the Super Ball, and then Hampton would roll watermelons, and they were like they would just go along the ground. So like Buster was like an arcing thing. So all three characters had a different like type of weapon or whatever that would kind of a little bit of a change. But it was like the fact that it would do it on the fly. Like it's like real time weapon changing, or whatever. But it was pretty good. It wasn't super long, but again, graphics for the time.
Yeah.
Konami was pushing that system harder than anyone besides Nintendo. Like Nintendo, of course, and then like Konami was really pushing what it could do. And the music was actually good in all those games. Not just hey, it plays the Tiny Toons theme, but like it also plays like the original level music's really good too, and stuff like that. And there's a little bit of it wasn't just go left to right in the first one. It was like you would go through a sort of a maze-like level. You had to find certain other characters like Dizzy Devil, Fifi LaFume, Furball, and I know way too much about Tiny Toons.
Me too, man. I hear you. I
Shirley
love
the
those Warner
Loon,
Brothers cartoons.
stuff
yeah.
like that.
Arnold the Pitbull, Foulmouth, all those guys.
I
Yeah.
wonder if there's a reason you brought those two up.
Oh wow, it's funny. I actually didn't even think about that. That's funny. I guess I'm just so used to it.
Specifically those
Yeah,
two.
that's so funny. I didn't even. Well, Furball was that too. I didn't
Yeah.
say him, but you already had. So, yeah, that's funny.
Well, that was okay. So I'm gonna interject there. He's normally Frank Welker, except in the Star Trek episode, which is the only episode he has speaking lines in which switched over voices. So,
Right.
Yeah, I know a lot about Tiny Toons.
No, it's great.
So, anyways, the second one was Montana Max's Revenge, or is it either that or Montana's Movie? I think it was Montana's Movie Madness, which is a very different game, completely different. Like,
I think I remember that.
More different from Mario 1 to 2 even. It is very bizarre. Like it actually took a while to sort of wrap my head around because like the mechanics were really different. You had this weird thing where you would press down and forward and Buster would do a dash and stuff like that, and like the levels would change up and they're all like different movie themed. Again, the graphics on that one were really pushing the system a lot harder than other games were at the time. So yeah, those are one. Like I'll just say, like as far as other underrated, there was an early game that Nintendo made called Solar Striker, which was a vertical shooter, and it's kind of one of the only. It's very early in the system's life, but it's one of the only times Nintendo ever tackled that genre, and it actually wasn't bad. It was pretty decent. It was a very early title, but we had it, and I enjoyed it a lot, just because it was faster. It flowed like Nintendo programmers, they knowing their own hardware a little better. So it actually kind of played a little better than a lot of similar games of that type. That early on with the Game Boy, people were just like, it was just Slow Down City, you know what I mean? So,
Right. Another game I just thought about that I loved as a kid was Balloon Kid. The only like adventure based, stage progress based balloon fighter game. And what was actually really cool about it, not only was it a fun game, really hard when you were a kid, but a fun game, but it was actually one of the earliest examples, other than like Metroid, where you play as a like a female character. Now, of course, this one's like a little girl, but she's an older sister going to save her little brother. And that was way before that was in vogue, which it should have always been. But it was like a really early example of playing as a female character going to save her little male character brother, which I thought was really cool. I think even at the time I thought it was kind of neat. And the game itself was a lot of fun. One more thing I do want to shout out, and any GameXplain fans watching will not be surprised. Everybody knows Mega Man 5 on Game Boy is fantastic. You got the Star Droids. It's like an original NES game almost. Really, there's a lot of content. It's long. But I feel like because the other games more, like they mirror the NES releases more and having the same Robot Masters and stuff, they're a little more overlooked. And I actually think Mega Man 3 and 4 are both really underappreciated. And 4 especially is... phenomenal. And like you were saying, Konami was pushing the Game Boy. So is Capcom.
Yeah, with Gargoyle's Quest early on. But like I think maybe the reason Mega Man's kind of get a worse rap is because of Mega Man 1 and 2 on the Game Boy.
See, I thought 1 was actually a pretty okay.
Yeah,
but 2 was just like that was outsourced to Mina Engineering.
It was slow down, and it's I think a lot of people kind of got the wrong impression.
Yeah,
because. Mega Man, especially 2, because Mega Man 2 is like one of the best NES games. So anyone who got Mega Man 2 for Game Boy got such a lesser version of Mega Man 2 that I think it probably hurt it in the end.
I'm sure it did. But what's so interesting is that you see that jump from Mega Man 2 to 3. Now, of course, again, 2 is outsourced. It didn't look or feel like a Mega Man game at all.
Yeah.
But then you go from 2 to 3, and suddenly Capcom is firing on all cylinders. It feels like an NES game. The music very, very closely emulates the NES soundtracks. Like, it's really good. So it's such a shame that like 2 sully the Game Boy series, name, because 3, 4, and 5 are all phenomenal games. But again, everybody knows by now that 5 is great. But 3 and 4, I think people should pay more attention to.
Good points there. You mentioned Gargoyle's Quest.
Oh yeah,
that's the one I would bring up. I played that a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got it. Someone bought it for me, my mom or dad or something, and I was just like, "Well, this game looks so cool," and just played it a lot as a kid. I don't think I got very far in it ever, but I loved replaying that first level over and over again.
Oh yeah,
I didn't get to play that game much as a kid. That was a big no-no in my household.
Oh really?
Something that looked like that.
Oh. Fair enough, yeah. I will say another one, then this is something that even my GameXplain buddies didn't know. I played a lot of Wave Race on the Game Boy.
Yeah, Wave Race.
Wave Race actually had its genesis on the Game Boy. Not a lot of people know that.
Yes,
and I played a lot of that top-down racer, and I had a lot of fun with it. So I bring that up sometimes, and a lot of people are like, wait, no, Wave Race 64 is the first one. I'm like, no, it really wasn't. Go and do your research. I promise it wasn't. And I had that game, and I really liked it.
I never played it as a kid. I mean, after Wave Race 64 came out, I was like, oh, these articles in Nintendo Power, like, oh, there was a Wave Race. Like, oh, there was another one. Oh, I got even older. It's like, now I can buy my own games. Oh, I'm going to go check out this. But, yeah, I think that's a factoid people just do not realize.
One game, I don't even remember the name, but I saw a lot of it. It was like a motocross game, I don't remember. But it was like a game where, like, it was kind of almost like Trials HD, almost.
Oh, interesting.
For Game Boy, because you could, they would have like loops where it was like a very stick figure looking motocross guy on a motorcycle, and he would actually go full loop-de-loops and stuff early on.
I feel like I've seen this.
Interesting.
It was one I saw a lot from family and friends, and I never actually personally owned the game. Another game, I don't know if it wasn't really, honestly, it wasn't very good, but like everyone had it, was the F1 game that came with the 4-player link box for the original Game Boy. Yeah. Dude, it was like, man, like everyone at school, it was funny because the game, it was an F1 game. I think it was Nintendo published, and it's only okay. But it came with this box that allowed you to connect up to 4 players and play an F1 racing game. But the thing was, everyone had the box and then the 4-player hub, but nobody had the separate link cables. So it basically ended up with, you'd have like a group of friends of 3 or 4, and everyone would have the hub box, and no one would actually have the male-to-male cables.
It's almost like a proto Four Swords Adventures, where you have to get all that equipment together. It's a great time if you can do it.
Yeah.
But it's so much to get together. I do have to ask you guys, I did think of one other game that I played a lot during my childhood. I don't know if it's technically underrated, but I liked it, and it's called Bubble Ghost. Did either of you play that?
Not familiar with that one.
Just very briefly.
Okay.
I know exactly. I know.
It was a cool
about
game, actually. Like you play as this ghost who has to blow a bubble through this mansion filled with traps designed to pop bubbles. Oh. And it's like it's a difficult game because you have to just blow the bubble very slightly, and even if one pixel touches one of the many traps, it pops.
It's like an adventure puzzle game.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Which reminds me, big one that's really good. Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle 2.
Oh yeah, I played that. Really good. Yep.
That one's really good too. So
there's so many great. Gems
there are definitely a lot. I mean, had a long run. Definitely had a lot of games out there. It was just the king for the longest time.
Yeah.
I mean, some argue still a king. I got a few more questions regarding the Game Boy. Next one comes from AJ. By the way, that was really good stuff. Like, I just want to say, like, I for some reason, Game Boy is the hardest for me to remember stuff for whatever reason, despite like owning one and stuff. It's basically for me, Link's Awakening. But like a bunch of like Super Mario Land, 6 golden coins, like stuff like that. Ninja Turtles, like early on, and then like for me it's like a blank for a few years. I think I just fell so hard into Super Nintendo and 64, I stopped caring about Game Boy. But anyway, our next Patron question from AJ: with Game Boy's 30th anniversary being celebrated, and with Link's Awakening remake coming out next month, I present this question to you. What other Game Boy games do you want to see either remade or have a sequel come out for the Switch? Thanks for all the great content you do here at Easy Allies. It keeps me entertained on my long commutes to my job as a teacher. Love and respect.
First off, I just want to say I am impossibly hyped for Link's Awakening. That's all. I know it's not the question. I just wanted to say that. This is kind of like a adjacent answer, but I really have been wanting there to be a Super Mario Land 2 theme in Super Mario Maker.
Oh, yes. Because
I want the bunny ears, the carrot power-up. So it's not quite the answer, probably, but yeah, that for sure.
I think that counts.
I think, honestly, I do think a remake, like an expanded remake of 6 Golden Coins with those mechanics, those very specific kind of off-kilter Super Mario World mechanics, and with the bunny ears. Like, I'd love to see that weirdness come back. Plus, again, that game, especially for a Game Boy game, that game used settings that we haven't seen. They were really creative. Like, you had the more normal stuff like a haunted mansion, but then you had a giant Mario machine that you had to fight your way up, and like a treetop area. Like, it had really interesting settings for a 2D Mario game on the Game Boy, and I'd like to see that reimagined. Like,
I'm with you. I'm 100% with you within this. I think a lot of people are with you on this, for sure. Definitely.
Honestly, from like the early 90s, it really felt like the Game Boy had some really creative versions of, Mario Land alone, 1 already had some weirdness to it. Mario Land 2, lots of really great stuff, never really seen again. Link's Awakening did a lot of really interesting things that even Enuma said that, it shaped the future of the franchise, with the stuff. Like, there's a weirdness, or I don't know, it's not weirdness, but there's a wonderful sort of creativity that seemed to happen with Nintendo at the start of the Game Boy, where they just did, if they thought it up, they just did it to see if they could make it happen. Like Tezuko talked about, like, oh, did you ever ask about, using Mario characters in Link's Awakening? He's like, well, I just figured it was a Game Boy, I'll just do it anyways. And he was just like, I'll just do it, whatever. Yeah. I just had the idea, so I just threw it in there. And I didn't think about it. And I'm like, I don't know, there's something about the sort of entrepreneurial spirit of those early Game Boy titles that were really great, and I just want to throw that in there.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it. A couple of years ago, we probably would have said Metroid 2. Of course, we had that remake now, and it was a very, I would say, loose adaptation of Metroid 2. It wasn't a beat for beat remake, but it was great. I will say that I would love, and I don't ever expect this to happen, but I would love to see Nintendo take a shot at remaking the first 2 Kid Icarus games, including of Myths and Monsters, with modern Pit, with modern game mechanics, and make the games fun. And I say that because, it's funny, the Game Boy, all these years later, would be followed up by the 3DS, which, in my opinion, had Kid Icarus Uprising, one of the greatest games of all time. So, try to match that. Let's take Pit, keep trying to keep them relevant, not just in Smash Brothers, and make those first 2 games, or even combine them. You can combine both games into one longer game, because both of them are pretty short.
Yeah.
But I want to see Pit in his own game again, and I think if they could do like make those games kind of similarly thematic as Uprising, they could have a lot of fun playing with these characters. Palutena, Medusa, maybe even get a glimpse of Hades before he becomes the big bad in Uprising. I just think there's so much they could play with in that world, because Uprising was brilliant, and I just want to see more Kid Icarus stuff.
How much they lean on Pit, not just like with Sakurai taking his crack with Kid Icarus on 3DS, but also like in the Smash Brothers universe.
Yeah.
Kid is a prominent figurehead in that, in the marketing and the videos and stuff.
Right.
Pushed hard. It's very interesting that you haven't tried to revisit.
And I just wish they would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
and
something
I feel,
that seems like kind of perfect.
And it's almost a blank slate opportunity because I don't think they have any reason to like try to adhere to the template set by Myths and Monsters because it wasn't very good. So use the very the basis of the story, whatever, but then just make a completely new game on top of it. And I just think that would be really interesting, almost like they did with Metroid: Samus Returns, because in a way you can argue that that's almost a new game. Yeah, the main beats are there. The boss fights with all the 40 different Metroids and the evolutions and the Queen Metroid and the story. All the beats are the same, but how you get there was very heavily reimagined.
Yes.
And I would love to see that same concept applied to Kid Icarus 1 and 2.
I'm with you. I'm on board with that.
Nice.
And I'm actually kind of surprised they haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
But that's Nintendo. They do what they want to do.
Well, it's people suck and didn't buy Kid Icarus Uprising and didn't buy Okami.
That too, but
every one of you who didn't buy those 2 games, we can't be friends. I'm sorry.
Well, I heard it gave people carpal tunnel, so I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting they didn't go back to it. Also, the Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins, like that feels like one of the most obvious and perfect ones for them to do as well.
Right.
And wouldn't surprise me if that came up at some point. Hey, we're doing it again. We're remaking it. It's like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense.
And it even had secret exits and stuff, like all the stuff you'd gotten used to in Super Mario World. They had all that stuff in his little Game Boy game. It was so good.
It's this exceptional game. I am curious though. And so is one of our patrons, because there were rumors of this earlier on. I think they started last year, and this comes from Stephen Faulkner. Do you think we're ever going to see a Game Boy Classic released? Because there were those rumors about, it was patented, they did this Game Boy case stuff, and then nothing came of it. And their kind of closing sentiments after the SNES Classic kind of closed out its run was that, and games started to become available, the NES service, on Switch, I mean. The NES service came online with the launch of their online service. It feels like they kind of have transitioned to, okay, we might be done with classic systems, despite new ones coming out. We got Genesis Mini coming out. We still have more coming out. But do you think a Game Boy Classic is still in the cards?
No.
Yeah,
I thought one time I thought, okay, this is probably what's going to happen. I thought they probably won't go for N64 just because of having to mass produce those controllers again. That would be expensive. Whereas like a Game Boy, you could probably make a cheap portable little backlit Game Boy, and it would probably be easier. I thought for a while it was, that was maybe going to happen. I think this was the year to do it if they were going to do it, but it looks like they're not anyways. And I think the only reason the NES Mini existed was because Nintendo needed something before the Switch came out. And I think the SNES one was sort of just like, well, that was really successful. Let's just keep it going for a little bit longer. But I think for those mini consoles, they purely only existed because the Wii U had tanked so bad, and it was so dead, and they needed something, in their holiday season to fill a void because Paper Mario Color Splash was not going to do it. So they only existed as a means for Nintendo to get some money the year the NES came out, and then SNES was more of just like a bonus the following year. But as far as I think Nintendo's concerned, I think they're done with the minis because they have the Switch. And in their mind, it's like a way to offer value to their online service. Because if you look at the investor meetings, they're always constantly asking about, what are you going to do to add to the online service? What are you doing about something that investors seem to heavily care about? And Nintendo being so gun shy about online, it seems like for them it's like they don't want to commit to like a massive online infrastructure, but an easy thing to do is just to throw these NES titles, SNES titles on their online service for the Switch. So I think for them, they look at it as like there's no real monetary need for them to make one, and they probably might even think that might cannibalize sales a little bit, even though I don't think it would. I think if you had like a $60, $70 and like Game Boy Classic, I really don't think it would do much as far as Switch goes. But for them, it's like, well, we would want to use it instead for a reason for people to buy into our online service. That's the way I think they're going to be. They're looking at it as far as I'm concerned. So I think the NES and SNES were just means to an ends for them, and that means is over. So I don't think we're going to see a classic for that reason. It's a very cynical corporatist reasoning there, but that's what I think.
I half agree with everything you said. I do think the ship has sailed on the Game Boy Classic. We actually had a great discussion about this at GameXplain, and back then I said, I think we all mostly agreed that a Game Boy Classic we thought was going to happen. But then, I agree, if it was going to happen, it needed to be this year. And the more I thought about it, the concept of it, I'm just like, okay, well, it needs to be a handheld to mirror the original Game Boy, but who's going to want to lug a giant brick around with them these days? And it also has to have an HDMI out to play your Game Boy games on the TV. But I just feel like those two concepts don't merge very well. And I almost feel like, what would they actually do with it? Because again, the NES and SNES Classic are one thing, is they're at home and they're an HDMI.
Yeah.
Who's going to take a giant brick with them on the road these days? Because you have a Switch, you have your phone, So I don't think that's going to happen, but I am actually looking at the rest of it in the opposite way, which is I do think we're going to get an N64 Classic. I actually think that's happening still. I don't know why. I just kind of feel like it's going to happen. And I see it the opposite way, which is, yeah, Nintendo could sell Virtual Console games for $5 a pop, $8 a pop, or they could sell a collection of games for $80 a pop. And we know that the NES and SNES Classics sold gangbusters. And so selling out at $60 a pop probably looks a little more attractive to them than just selling the same games at $5 or less a pop, depending on how they price them. So I feel like there actually is a vested interest in them kind of, I wish they wouldn't do this, but keeping their retro games on separate platforms mostly, just because if they don't, that would cannibalize sales of the classic line if it continues. But if it doesn't, like you're saying, they don't have to worry about that. But I just feel like there is a vested interest in them charging as much as they can over and over again for these games. And, you throw 30 games onto a little, machine.
I'll say the only reason they won't make an N64 is because Nintendo is so Japan focused, and that system did so poorly over there.
It's true.
That in their minds, they're not even going to look at the fact that GoldenEye and Ocarina, the numbers they pulled in North America were so huge. They might not even notice that. They'll just be like, oh yeah, that system was terrible and nobody liked it over here, so they'll just kind of forget about it in a weird sort of way. Especially because man, Rare really helped out that system. It's like I would really like an N64 Classic. I would really like there to be new N64 controllers, particular because those things snap and break and they get dirty. And but it's just like I could just see a world where it's like, why didn't that ever happen? Just because a very simple it never crossed their minds because it was such a dud in Japan. Like it was, I don't know if people know this. Like it was third place in Japan behind the Saturn.
It did not do well in Japan.
It was just distant thirds.
And here's the other thing: if they do commit to a Game Boy Classic, that kind of is weird because then where do you go? Then they kind of have to commit to a Game Boy Advance Classic, and then maybe eventually a DS Classic. And I just don't feel. I mean, we're not. That doesn't make sense to me. None of that makes sense to me. So I do think that they're going to eschew their handheld line. I do personally believe we may see an N64 Classic, but you bring up good points. But I do think the ship has completely sailed. A Game Boy Classic.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to N64, it would not surprise me. There's definitely been rumors about it. It's definitely a possibility.
Oh yeah,
I think you start entering territory where it gets a little bit more complex. Just like Game Boy Classic presents some logistical issues, also some strategic issues. Like Game Boy, as you said, Classic would be a competitor with Switch because it's competing for your portable space to take with you, but at the same time N64 also starts to approach a territory where they are mostly 3D games, and it's ripe for remake territory. It's ripe for being repurposed, which you see a lot of companies being more interested in doing rather than just releasing the classic version. Let's remake it, re-release it, and package it for $60.
I mean, that's the thing. I've played the original version of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask a billion times. They're classics. They're incredible games. But I would, rather than playing those versions again on a classic, they literally could just throw up the 3DS versions, up-res them to 720p even. Don't change anything else. Maybe get the texture to slight, but honestly, just throw it on the Switch.
So wonderful.
That's all I need. Wouldn't it? They don't have to make it 1080p. They don't have to make it. They don't have to do a whole lot. I'm okay. I don't need crazy visuals. Just give me the 3DS versions that I can play on a TV, please.
I just want, I know a lot of people want this. It seems so obvious. I wish they'd do it. But getting back to Game Boy real quick. So it seems we don't really feel like a Game Boy Classic is in the works or something that we're realistically going to do. But our last question from Morgan Mahala actually the simple version of the question is, rather than maybe a Game Boy Classic, do you think that Game Boy games will, their original versions, will ever come to like the Switch to be available?
They should.
They were available on the 3DS through the eShop, but we've only gotten NES games and then some standalone purchases through the Nintendo Shop eShop on the Switch. But do you think Game Boy games will ever make an appearance on the Switch in any form?
What's funny about this is that I answered a similar question in a recent discussion, and what's funny is if you break it all down completely, the Switch technically is a successor to the Game Boy. It is the furthest, because it's a handheld. It's also a console, but it can also be seen as a successor to the Game Boy. So it makes sense. Yeah. And again, Game Boy games are on the 3DS, and the Switch Mini is positioned to replace that line.
Yeah.
And so, I almost say, why wouldn't they? It makes no sense for them to, but this is Nintendo. So they do things that make no sense all the time. And but it seems like such a slam dunk. It is a handheld, and they could even market it that way, like, hey, Game Boy 30th anniversary classics, and you can play them on your new handheld Switch, and relive those memories. There are so many cool marketing angles they could take with this. But again, this is Nintendo, and they don't always do things that seem obvious.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, how long has it been since supposed the people data mine SNES games are supposed to be coming to Switch, and we still haven't had any word on that? So, you never know with Nintendo.
It's perplexing. The only thing I can think of that might make them not want to do it right away is that, and I've pointed this out many times, like on the 3DS eShop, you can go buy Link's Awakening for $6. And here comes Link's Awakening's remake, which for the most part, besides Dompe, seems to be identical content-wise, and it's $60. So it's like it's 10 times the difference. So it's almost like maybe they're looking. Maybe the reason we haven't is that they're going to see how Link's Awakening does, and then they'll decide, should we remake other games, as full-fledged remakes? Should we upport Metroid 2 maybe? I don't know if that'll happen, but like just something like that where it's like maybe they don't want to put the old games on there because maybe they want to like do remakes and resell them in a different light. I don't know. It's so trying. It's so hard and confusing trying to figure out what goes through their head on this stuff sometimes, because it's like there's almost nothing stopping them from there really isn't anything stopping them from putting DK94, like Mario Land 1 and 2, and like nothing stopping them. And people, and yes, I would buy it.
Now,
I would plop down the $5-6 and maybe they put it on the Switch today. I download it at home tonight.
In a second, yeah. So. I do wonder if maybe there's a fear of them cannibalizing their own library with the idea that, our older audience, our more hardcore audience who've been here since the NES and Game Boy, we don't want them to get pulled back into playing the classics instead of paying $60 for Astral Chain, for Link's Awakening remake, I just wonder if people like us may fall back into just playing the classics too much more than they would want us to.
That kind of happened a bit with 3DS because I got to a point where, like, if I'm at the airport, I just booted up Tetris and DK94 and Link's Awakening, and I just played those 3 games. I had all these other games, because I was part of that ambassador. Because I was one of those people who bought it at launch, and I had to get the 20 free.
I remember that.
So I had all these Game Boy Advance games that I actually kind of only played at a glance. And then I ended up playing Tetris a lot, like just old Tetris and old DK. But I still, so maybe there's some merit to that, honestly. Like,
yeah, I mean, possibly. Or also, we don't know the sales numbers for 3DS Virtual Console on Game Boy. Like, maybe they sold poorly. Maybe it's not worth the effort.
That's also a completely valid in the other direction, Right. Maybe it's just like, well, nobody bought them, so.
It does seem as though the Virtual Console as a concept and as a service has really been not a non-factor, but it's really fallen a lot since the Wii. Like even just from the Wii it was great, but then as soon as they did it again on the Wii U, which had its own problems, of course, and the 3DS, it felt like the luster had already worn off, and they implemented it in a poorer fashion. Because on Wii you got these weekly drops of games you actually wanted. Across so many different consoles, even stuff like TurboGrafx 16, like that's
Rondo
awesome.
Of blood.
Yeah, like you got stuff you actually wanted. Then you got to the Wii U, and Nintendo would drip feed you like Urban Champion and Balloon Fight, which Balloon Fight's a good game, but I'm just saying or Ice Climber, like they would just drip feed these games that you don't really want. Like it still kills me to this day that on Wii U it took us more than a year for them to port A Link to the Past. It took them more than a year to get one of the most important games of all time.
Their
in their
scheduling
library.
on that was
Remember
a little
there was
strange.
there was like one or two of the biggest games ever on when the Wii launched on day one. You could download like Mario 64.
Right. Yeah. So ever since
It was like weird. It was like that.
yeah,
The
they
Wii
did it
U-
right the first time.
And then the Wii, like you said, the Wii was like a very slow, and then they just gone with the Switch.
Right.
So I don't even know what the rationale behind it even is. Maybe they're just like maybe it is because they wanted to sell the minis. Maybe because the Wii became what it was because they got rid of all that stuff from Animal Crossing. No more free NES games in Animal Crossing. We got to resell them on the Wii, and then it was just kind of like it just sort of like fell apart, year by year after that. So it's just super bizarre to me. And I don't know, because with original Game Boy, you have the thing where it's like it doesn't even have color. It's it's monochrome. Like, how good is that going to look on a Switch? It probably looks fine, but maybe someone's thinking in their head somewhere, at an NCL, like this won't look good on the Switch screen. I don't think.
Yeah, what if somebody looks over their shoulder and they see them playing this monochrome game? It's going to make them think not want it, or maybe
like
there's
something silly like that. Like, there's a lot of weird possibilities. Like I've heard of things getting canned or canceled or whatever for dumber reasons. So it's always that weird possibility that just someone has a weird feeling somewhere and they just have enough power and pull to just say, let's not do that.
And the thing is, there's already precedent for Game Boy games being perfectly fine to play on a TV. We had the Super Game Boy back in the non-HD days, and the Game Boy Player for the Game Boy Advance, both of which were fantastic. I love playing Game Boy games on the TV. And then more recently, we saw an example of this on the Switch with Collection of Mana, where you play Final Fantasy Adventure. And I've been playing Collection of Mana. FF Adventure actually is another underrated gem, in my opinion, that I was replaying on the TV with Collection of Mana, and I had a great time. It didn't matter to me that it was monochrome and super, basic.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
didn't
That's a
care.
good point, because I did download Collection of Mana.
Yeah, and FF Adventure holds up, whether you played on the Switch or on the TV.
The
Or on
translation,
handheld.
not so
No, translation, no. But the game itself,
I actually didn't play that back in the day, so
you
it was my
didn't?
first time playing it.
Nice.
So I'm like, graphics are not going to bother me. I'm like, wow, this
Yeah.
is not like... And I'm sitting there thinking, like, Link's Awakening, one of the greatest game ever made, and then I'm like Final Fantasy Adventure, I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Like, it clearly did not have as much love put into its text in English as...
Yeah, well, that was also kind of the dark ages of localization. And
Extreme dark ages.
Square was never very good at it anyway until later on.
Precisely. So,
Yeah.
Playing that now is just kind of like, whoa.
Yeah. But no, I think Game Boy games, we've seen proof that they can work in a TV context, and it's just a matter of whether Nintendo wants to do it or not. And so far, they seem to not want to.
Yeah, I love my Game Boy Player, my GameCube. It was, it was a necessity for me at a point. I will say, regards to like the possibility of, like the Nintendo remaking Game Boy games rather than just adding them to like the Switch to buy individually like that. I would love for them, if they're gonna go that route, to at least include the original versions in these remakes, like Metroid 2: Return of Samus, Link's Awakening. That when at a certain point you just have access to the original game in it.
I
would
like
love that.
I don't think that's going to happen.
No, it won't. But like,
Nah.
I really wish I see some games that do that. Like not the original versions, but like when you see the Metal Gear HD collection come out. But you get access to the old games, like the MSX games. Like, that's awesome. I love that.
And it's not Game Boy, but like that would have been my one game I would have said for a remake is Ghost Babel.
Oh,
Game Boy
that's
Color,
really good.
Hey, that counts.
Good one.
It's
That
color,
counts.
so I don't know, but I would say to me, I'm like, Ghost Babel to me
Pretty
should
cool.
be remade.
I'd like to see, this is something that Capcom has no vested interest in doing, but I think it would be cool to see Mega Man Extreme 1 and 2 remade, console style. Or, you know what, like, we have the Mega Man Legacy collections, but there was that one, for a while, they had a thing called Mega Man Mania that was supposed to come out. That was supposed to be a collection of 1 through 5 for the Game Boy, but it got canceled and it never came out.
I remember that, yeah.
I'd love to see that come to console, even if they don't remake them NES style, with color. Like, I think that would be cool.
I think so.
But no,
too.
they have no interest. There's no reason why they would do that. Yeah.
Very
Wouldn't
true.
Extreme 1 and 2 just be Mega Man X if you remade it
Well,
in a way?
It would be, but
Not
they
not
remixed
entirely.
elements of it.
Yeah, not
and there were like
entirely,
new
but-
villains and stuff, even though
Yeah.
they were kind of one-note villains. But 2 was more different from 1. I will say that.
And it's a really weird lost gem of a weird game that not a lot of people know about. Like,
It is.
especially Extreme 2.
2 is much better. Yeah.
Yeah, those are some other games that just people don't know about. That
Yeah.
I'm shocked they didn't end up on the collections.
Yeah.
They were on the 3DS Virtual Console at least. They ended up
Yeah.
there, but yeah.
Interesting choice there. But yeah, happy 30th anniversary, Game Boy.
Indeed.
Still
Happy 30th.
still a powerhouse.
Saying that hurts.
Yeah.
It does. It really does.
Fond memories. We got one. Moving on to our last segment here. This past weekend was EVO 2019, and both of you were there in attendance.
Yes.
So I want to start there. How was your EVO 2019 experience?
I had a great time. I will say that more and more, I love watching high-level fighting gameplay. I'm not really good at fighting games other than Smash, which I'm fairly intermediate, I would say. But like, I love Street Fighter. I'm not very good at it. Tekken, all that. So I'm more and more. I feel like the first 2 days, like paying for that is becoming less relevant for me personally because I often will go alone, and I'm not the kind of guy. Like, I'll have my GameCube controller on me. But I'm just not the kind of guy who feels comfortable going up to a random TV with like 3 people I don't know and saying, "Hey, can I join?" That's just not my style. But my friends, like, I love my friends, but they don't ever seem to want to travel anywhere or do anything like that.
Okay.
So they never want to go do stuff like EVO. So I never get to go with friends who, I see everyone else there and they're with their friends. So it isn't as fun as a single, like going there alone.
Gotcha.
Now, my wife was there with me, but she didn't go to the first 2 days because it didn't interest her. She likes the finals. So she was there with me at the finals. But it was fun, and I think it's great for the right kind of EVO attendee. But I think if you're going alone, the first 2 days kind of lose their luster, at least for me. But that may not be the case for you.
Yeah, it was, in a weird sort of way. Like I agree and but also have a very opposite view where it's not really as EVO is now. As far as the spectator thing goes, the first 2 days are not as much. Like, I will say this, like, Soul Calibur finals were on Friday, not even Saturday, but Friday night, and they were excellent, actually. They had a great top 8 for Soul Calibur 6. But it's gotten to a point where it's pretty big now. There's a lot of people there, and it's in a big area, but I don't know how you feel about this, but I really would like it if they were able to separate all the artists and exhibitors into a separate hall.
Yeah.
And then leave the other hall strictly for just tournament play.
Gotcha.
And
I
stuff
agree.
like that.
And like free stations.
Yeah,
and
like
stuff,
free
yeah.
stations can go in like the exhibitors hall. Like,
Good idea.
because then you could just keep the tournament pure to the tournament. So everyone who wants to watch tournament or needs to be in their tournaments can be in one, in their spot. And then all the people who are just kind of there to buy, cool little Pokemon doodads and what have you, and art prints and stuff like that, they can go to the other hall. Like, personally, that's how I feel like, because you know me, like, I'm always thinking about how a convention can be run better. It's just my nature. It's just like I'm always constantly thinking logistically about it. And I'm not saying EVO's bad at all. I'm just saying, like, it got to a point where it can get like, there's like choke points, for checking in, and then like getting your badge is like, like a really big choke point and stuff like that, and stuff like that. And then there's sort of like a split between people who want to watch the stuff, and then people who are kind of just there to like buy stuff or just play casual matches and stuff like that.
Right.
And I feel like it kind of neat I think it would benefit both sides to have it sort of split in a way.
Yeah.
Just split the rooms. But it's not the end of the world if it doesn't. It's fine if it doesn't happen that way, as far as that goes. Because like grand finals are in a completely different area. And one thing I will say is a lot of people, when it's their first year, like recently, they actually get kind of bummed out because they find out that there's no exhibitors, there's no artists on the last day. The last day is just in the big arena, right?
Right.
So that exhibit hall, whatever, where EVO takes place for the first 2 days, that is closed and gone. People going home. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I saw something really cool. I wanted to get, a custom controller or arcade stick or even an art print or whatever. And in Saturday night, I'll go get it tomorrow. No, you won't. Like, because it's gone.
Gotcha.
It's only a 2 day for people who are not watching the main events. It's a 2 day event,
right?
So there's sort of like this weird sort of like, if you're there to watch some high level play, Sunday's going to be where you get your good stuff. But then Sundays, there's no consistency to Sunday except for like Street Fighter, maybe Tekken.
Yeah, and now Smash going forward.
Yeah, I would imagine going forward Smash, because like last year they had like, it was weird because like they had Smash 4 and Smash for Melee, but then like Melee overtook Grand Finals where Smash 4 was Saturday, but it was flipped the year before that. So it was like, Grand Finals on Sunday can be all over the place as far as when it's not, Street Fighter will always be there, but like, the final game, what else is going to be there is different and stuff like that. So it's an interesting thing. Like last year they had Dragon Ball in the Grand Finals, and this year Dragon Ball was put on Saturday. It wasn't because Dragon Ball takes forever.
Right.
It just eats so much time. Yeah. Per match. So
I don't think there's any way that Ultimate isn't in every Grand Finals going forward, because the problem with 4 was like that it had some balance issues. Like I like 4 way more than Melee. I'm not a Melee fan.
Yeah,
but
I'm in the same boat.
But like those finals last year were really, really, really a bummer because it was Bayonetta versus Bayonetta. She was so strong.
Oh gosh, yes.
In this tournament with Ultimate, you had 8 different characters or 7 or 8 different characters in the top 8, let alone the top 32. Yeah. And the last match was Pokemon Trainer, a character you would never expect to see in the finals, versus Joker, who's that's really cool too. So
and before that, Wario versus Joker in losers final. Like Wario is in here. What?
And I just want to point out to everybody watching that yes, MKLeo won the tournament, and that's true. But the only person who was able to take MKLeo down 2-0 was Kamehameha's Mega Man. In my view, Kamehameha technically won the tournament. He didn't. But I just wanted to point that out. He was the only one who could take down MKLeo.
But I will say it was really interesting watching the top 8 because it was like 2-0, 2-0, 2-0.
Yeah.
And then it got to winners final. And then it got like it got really intense and close. Yeah. And then it was like back and forth. But at the first few matches when in the top 8 for Smash, I was like, well, this is like 2-0s. Like, like it's weird watching that because some of the other fighting games, it'll never go 2-0. It'll always be back and forth down to the wire. But like just like Smash, I want to like point out too with Soul Calibur 6, 9 characters used in top 8. Mm-hmm. That's so to me, awesome. I love that. I'm not a huge fan of like previous years was Bayo. Yeah. Although it was 2 years ago was real exciting to have that there was that Bayo versus Diddy Kong final.
That was Zero's Diddy Kong. Yeah, that was really cool.
And it pulling off that Hail Mary at the end for that kill combo. That was great.
Yeah.
But again, it was a lot of Bayo and Bayo and Cloud.
Yeah, and I agree with you. To me, it's all about character diversity.
Yeah,
like that's one of the reasons I'm not a Melee fan is you see the same like 5, 6 characters.
And I think Joker winning does kind of repeat the sort of thing where I've been in fighting game development where there's 2 ways to develop a fighting game, and it's either with regards to new characters, either at the end of the dev cycle or DLC characters, is you can either try to balance them as you go along, or you overpower them. You release them, and then you basically try to bring them back down to earth, normalize them.
Right, because that has appeal. Like I'm going to play it by these super strong characters. Then
and it clearly happened in Smash 4.
Well, and it certainly just I mean, I almost feel like, and I don't want to go there quite yet because he hasn't been out for too long, but it almost feels like Hero might be Smash Ultimate's Bayo moment, where he is again. He's not been out for very long. I don't want to say he's busted. But he feels really strong.
Yeah, and it feels like that's what they're doing because Joker won this tournament.
Right.
Hero just came out. So it's like these characters are coming in like really good, and then maybe over time they're going to get normalized a bit. Which I kind of prefer that in a way. Stuff I've helped consult on and stuff. When you bring a character out when you're too thoughtfully trying to make them balanced, you end up kind of just releasing a boring character.
That's fair.
Every character should be way too good, and then as you play test, you go, okay, this is what we need to bring them down to earth.
Yeah, I feel like companies also generally go that route anyway, beyond just fighting game community, but in fighting games. I feel like any game introduces new jobs, new classes, new characters, especially when they're paid DLC and stuff like that. It's usually in their best interest to make them as appealing as possible, and making them a little bit more overpowered means that people are going to gravitate towards them at the beginning and adopt them, which means more sales for them. They're getting and stuff.
But that's like the
well, I mean, it's the honest way. Like they need people to buy into the system, and I think it's easier for them to over time bring it back down. It's easier to start higher and bring him down than maybe too low and try and bring him up, because balancing stuff is a hard job. It's not easy, and I think you are always going to upset people, but I think when a lot of people want to play the new stuff, you're making more people happy than angry when, oh, this is what I want to play. Oh, I'm interested in playing it. Oh, it's a good character. Yeah, I'm going to stick with it. And then you slowly bring it down over time. It's like, okay, I get it. It was a little too overpowered, versus if it stinks, like, oh, this is like getting destroyed by everyone. No one's going to adopt it. It becomes like almost a dead character job, whatever. And people abandon it too early, and it's like, ooh, that's a big mistake.
Yeah, it's called Lobo in Injustice 1.
Right. Yeah. But I think I think that approach is probably best, and I do expect in the next patch, like 4.1 or whatever, I do think Hero will get some nerfs, hopefully. Anyway, I mean, again, I think it's too early to say he's completely broken, but there are some things he can do that are pretty ridiculous. But going back to Evo, I will say that I'm not one of those people who will go to Evo and get into the hype and then go home and buy a fighting game that I really love watching, because I know I'm not good enough to get a lot out of it. This year is different, however, because my wife and I were watching the Tekken 7 finals, which were so hype. And I've always appreciated Tekken from a distance. Like, I played 2 and 3 a lot on PS1, but ever since then I just kind of watch it from a distance. But that made me go home and buy Tekken 7, which I then discovered is $14.99 right now. So if you want to get into Tekken at all, this is the time. It's 70% off, and I've been having a great time with it casually, and I don't know why this surprises me, because it's the Namco sound team, but I discovered that Tekken has some of the best music, like electronic music, I've ever heard. Like, these Tekken 7 soundtrack is just so good.
Yeah. Except for that building top one.
I haven't played it enough yet to know for sure.
Oh, okay. You'll know.
Okay,
everyone, it's infamous, because I have friends who love Tekken, and I think Tekken has good music too. But there's one oddball track in Tekken 7.
Nice.
It's just a glaring noise at the top of this building top level. And it's just like, what happened? It was so good.
That was the moment they ran out of budget.
But the thing is, on the PS4 version, which I'm assuming that's the one
PS4,
you got.
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually have a jukebox mode on
good.
PS4, which is really cool.
All the previous games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you actually can get rid of that one song forever.
Yeah.
It's super weird, because like, the music is always super good. And weirdly enough, Okabe-san from the Nier series, he was doing he was doing Tekken music back in the day.
That's right.
Super weird origin story there. So
yeah. It almost sounds like a Chrono Cross situation, where like the soundtrack is legendary in terms of its quality, but then you have the battle theme, and it was just such a dissonance. It didn't fit with the rest of the game. It wasn't very good.
Mitsuda is the best game composer, possibly the best composer to ever live.
Yeah.
I feel. Man has not been great at battle themes.
He's not.
In general.
That's what I'll say. Mitsuda used to be my favorite, and he's still like number 2. But Yoko Shimomura, like, for me, she's like the top. Like, Kingdom Hearts. I mean, good lord. Parasite Eve. So anyway, this isn't a video game music podcast.
I'm just discovering Parasite Eve. That's I like Parasite Eve because I'm like, okay, I have not heard Yoko Shimomura do stuff like this.
Yeah, her range is so, like, people forget that she did Parasite Eve, and like her range from like Super Mario RPG to Kingdom Hearts to Front Mission to
Front Mission.
Yeah, to like, Parasite Eve. She has such a range.
And people know how I feel generally about Kingdom Hearts, but I will always say Kingdom Hearts is a great soundtrack.
Fair enough.
The soundtrack is fantastic.
See, now we have to get back and have us back on to debate Kingdom Hearts, because I'm a huge fan. So, despite its issues, so we should do that. That'd be a lot of fun.
Oh, that would be an amazing thing.
I'm down.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which is funny, because like, I think they're like, for me, for Kingdom Hearts music, there are like exceptionally phenomenal tracks in that game. But there are also some that like I just don't personally enjoy.
Right.
But like, for me, it's always like, man,
Finny fun or whatever.
For whatever, I felt like I fell into this trap like I did with Breath of the Wild, where I didn't think it had a lot of music, and then you go actually seek out the soundtrack. It's like, holy crap, look how many tracks are there. It's like, it's being a little ignorant about that. But also, sometimes the game doesn't do itself any favors by not playing those tracks and letting them have time to breathe and enjoy them.
There's weird stuff, too, like Kingdom Hearts 2, the Pirates World has like a really just MIDI version of Hans Zimmer's theme, which is like, which I'm almost wondering if was there like a licensing problem there, something? I don't know.
But Kingdom Hearts 3's music was, whoo.
And and I will say this, because you're such a big Smash fan, as am I. I'm going to say something that's going to totally annoy you, but I got my number 1 and number 3 dream characters: Mega Man, Banjo-Kazooie. Number 2, I want Sora. I want Sora.
I've said this. Sora is the last, oh crap moment character. He is the last like.
I agree. Yeah.
And I would want Sora in the game just so I could have the music.
The 2 songs.
Yeah,
the 2 songs.
At least
Simmons, you're not getting the music.
Yeah, well, not those two, not the vocal ones, but like the battle themes, like the theme where you're fighting Rutger Hauer or whatever, previously Leonard Nimoy, whatever, the old elf guy. Whatever.
You will get
the old elf guy.
The old
Xehanort,
whatever.
the main villain.
Like when you're fighting him in the Mediterranean, not Mediterranean Sea area or whatever. I don't remember what it is.
Okay.
I just know that the music was really good at that point.
You will get Traverse Town and the Traverse Town battle theme.
Oh,
and
no.
You will like it. And that is it.
no.
That is all you will get. Yeah. That is all we'll get.
That's all you're getting.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Could you imagine that? It's just Destiny Islands over and over.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I can.
Good enough soundtrack, but imagine like it's Destiny Islands and we only have 2 songs in there.
I remember back when the patch adding Cloud and Midgar like went live and like people were just getting to see like only 2 songs, and there were people like on GAF saying, "Oh well, the patch data has probably only partially come through, so there has to be more music." We were all just like, "Oh man!"
Yeah, no,
So yes, I can imagine that sadly because it happened.
Yes.
I mean, Hero got 8, so that's why I'm like, well, if it's a DLC, they can grift a little more money out of Square Enix's music division. So
maybe they talked him to.
But no, I would be down. I would be down with Sora.
Fair enough.
I got Banjo, so I'm like, whatever.
I'm so hyped.
The rest of the world all is right in the world. I have Banjo.
You gotta be happy on some level.
And
with
hopefully
that.
what you're saying about DLC characters starting off OP bodes well for Banjo-Kazooie.
Oh yeah, better.
Yeah.
It better.
I want Banjo in finals at Evo next year.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, yes. Dreaming about that.
Can you imagine all the people going, God.
Oh dear.
So good.
Get David Wise or
Grant.
Hell
Grant
yes.
Kirkhope to like compose like music for Evo or something for
so
that.
Grant does like the grand final
I guess,
suite or
like,
something.
well, like, what if they do at the Capcom route where they have like a special Capcom stage for like Street Fighter for Evo?
That would be
But like
cool.
they make a special Smash Brothers stage next year.
But that is actually something. The good point for Evo. Something they could do.
Yeah.
They had a little fun little trivia moments. Will this super kill? In between, and then they kind of screwed up with a little. That was some good ass Tekken by David Hayter.
Oh my god. That was the word. And I was actually about to say, hopefully if they do go with that Grant Kirkhope idea, that they ask him for permission.
Have him come out
Because-
there to play it. Like bring a band, bring an orchestra out there. That'd be cool. They would never do that, but I mean, that'd be cool.
I can tell you though, being there in the audience for that weird Snake moment was like,
Yeah.
because I was looking around like at everyone's like, wait, what, is Snake coming to Tekken? This is so cool. And then you later find out,
I was sitting with Wooly, and he was like literally like bagging his shit, like, no, like literally like blown away, like wind had gusted him over. He's like, no way.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
And then you find out like from David Hayter's Twitter that they didn't even ask him permission. Like that was a bad look for Evo, I think.
Yeah, one of the few, probably the biggest misstep of the tournament. Yeah, it was an interesting experience for someone watching on Twitch because he couldn't really make it. It was because of what chat was screaming that I couldn't even hear it. Like, what happened? Because the announcers, it was Markman and I believe Eris were on the commentators table for the Twitch stream.
Yeah.
And Eris like freaked out for a second, like, what was that? And then Markman's like, we'll talk about it later or something like that. And I was like, oh, well, what? Like, I was like, oh, did they leak an announcement? And then chat's like, Snake.
It was a weird
like,
moment.
What?
Yeah.
But besides that, when I was talking about maybe interesting things that maybe like Nintendo could do for Smash Brothers next year, I want to get into a Patron question about Nintendo's involvement with Evo and Smash Brothers, especially because we haven't gotten into it yet. We did talk about like the top 8 and grand finals of Smash Bros. Ultimate, but we didn't address that it was set the viewership record for Evo.
Yes.
In terms of like, that's the biggest game they've ever had. Also in terms of entrance, this amount of people who signed up to play it. It is a huge thing. And this question comes from Anthony Stevens. It's about what Nintendo might want to do going forward with the competitive scene. With Nintendo setting up Nintendo Versus as a social media entry to help highlight the competitive scenes for their games, both under their own competitive tours and third-party organized events, and starting to sponsor certain events in general, it seems that Nintendo is at least taking more care with the scene than before. However, it seems like Nintendo could do more to help boost the competitive scenes at the same time. If they are not willing to go down the esports prize pool route, like Capcom, Bandai Namco, and SNK, for example, What do you think they could do as an alternative to help bolster and improve the competitive scene?
Well, I think you hit on one right there. I hadn't even thought about it, but I love the idea. Like, they couldn't make it one of the DLC stages like you could play anytime, but I love the idea of a new event stages category where you have temporary access to like an Evo-themed stage where you can obviously it would be used for the tournament, but players at home could also like have a cool experience getting to try that for themselves, and then after the tournament, you can't get it anymore. And I think that would be pretty cool. One thing I will say, my concern about Nintendo getting more heavily involved with the tournament scene, and I preface this by saying I play Smash every way. The right way to play Smash is however you want. I play with items, I play without items, whatever. Final Smash is great. Stage morph, but when we've seen Nintendo run official Smash tournaments, it's always with items on. And again, they're fun, but I don't think they're as good in like especially 1v1. I think you can make an argument for like free-for-alls if you want to have that kind of tournament, but I think 1v1 items don't work. And
yeah, it's interesting because they actually got asked this recently, why they did their tournament the way they did it. And their answer was because things like EVO already exist. There are already people doing super hyper-competitive tournaments.
Right.
And as you said, Smash is for everybody. It transcends just being a fighting game. It is a game for all audiences. And this is obviously also just Nintendo speak as well, corporate speak. Their tournament rules are meant for, hey, we'd like to give other people a chance to feel the thrill of being in a competition.
And I do love that.
And they do that for a lot of their games. Over the history, they have done that to be for everyone.
Like Comic-Con, they always have like a kids tournament.
Yeah.
And I think they should keep doing stuff like that. I just don't know if that's the right format for EVO.
Yes. And that's where I think but Nintendo has also said they're kind of, their philosophy is they're not really, it doesn't seem like they're completely okay with people profiting off like competing with their games. It's this like weird gray line for them, and they kind of do make it a little black and white, and they clearly seem to stand on one side. Especially, I think Sakurai has even said that he's not for that. He doesn't prefer his games to be Smash to be used that way. And I think because of that, Nintendo, I don't think they'll get ever more involved, especially like with increasing the pool.
I agree.
That's not going to happen. They're not going to be like Capcom. They're not going to be like SNK. They're not going to be like NetherRealm, who contributed significant money to the pots.
Well, and the difference there is that Capcom and NetherRealm, they have a huge vested interest in the fighting game scene because that is one of their biggest cash cows. Nintendo, they make a ton of money from Smash, but they'll make a ton of money from Smash no matter what. They don't need the esports scene. Splatoon 2 is going to sell crazy. I think it's great that they've embraced it, but they don't need it in the same way that maybe Capcom and especially NetherRealm do.
Nintendo will never contribute to a prize pool.
Yeah.
Because they don't need to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Smash Ultimate's the best-selling fighting game of all time. I'm not getting into that argument.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I agree with you. Let's just say
whatever. Like, it's the grand final game at EVO. It's the best-selling fighting game of all time. They don't need to. And I personally feel that I don't think Nintendo wants to be involved. I think there's a section of NOA or some people within Nintendo that kind of like this. It's kind of cool. Like, esports is definitely becoming a thing. We want to have at least some involvement in it. We want to be at least some presence there because it's just good marketing just to at least have a presence. But I think little stages like Evo-centric stages or tournament-centric stages, that's a good way of sort of like kind of like we're involved. We're not necessarily, but we're not getting involved monetarily, with money give outs or anything like that. I think Nintendo is hesitant, and I think they're going to stay that way. I think they're always going to be at an arm's length when it comes to the esports scene, because they do have an image and brand that they do, especially in America, especially that they do like to keep and maintain. And there's definitely baggage that comes with anything with the FGC or any really esports anything. So I think Nintendo's like, we like the idea of competitive, like, having this stuff. It's cool, but like, we're going to stay, this far away, at all times. We're only gonna get this involved and stuff.
But that's a really good point because the FGC it's made such huge strides in the last several years, and they've improved, and I respect that. But sexism and racism and that kind of stuff still run fairly rampant. And I can see why Nintendo wouldn't want to have any. I mean, you just heard about the Evo after party, which I went by.
At?
You were at, yeah. So I was going to go, and then I saw the line.
I left early. Actually,
it looked, but then but there were people who got roofied.
Yeah,
and like that, Nintendo doesn't want to.
Yeah, and the thing is, for Evo's, like, that was not an Evo event. It was not at the hotel Evo was at. It was. I don't even know if they had any sponsorship or any organization.
It didn't seem like it.
I don't
necessarily blame Evo
in a
for that.
sense, it's like it's not really Evo didn't really have anything to do with that, but it is part. Yeah, it's all in that sort of area where stuff like that goes down.
It's still optics. Yeah,
and yeah, it's. There was. I mean, I remember hearing about a Pokemon TCG tournament. Where like the second place or like one of the losers of the tournament, like he found the room that the winner for the TCG tournament was, and he defecated in front of his hotel room door, and then he got disqualified or something like that.
Right.
Or so, there was some like that happened too, and it's like I don't think Nintendo wants to be involved in any sort of like thing that's going to bring that up. Like they don't want to. Like the last thing they want to hear about is that the Smash Brothers after party, a fight broke out and someone possibly got roofied. Like that is the last thing Nintendo wants to have on a headline with their name in it at all.
Right.
So.
And then you look at a situation like I can't remember the other guy's name, but Low Tier God, when he had that face off, like that confrontation with the guy who beat him in Street Fighter 4, I think it was. It was 5. I think it was 4. But he just went off on this expletive, hate-filled tirade, and and they're talking. It's over Street Fighter. Imagine if that happened over Smash, and suddenly it's Nintendo's game, and you've got these people saying all these horrifically bad things to each other.
I think that's the thing is like if Nintendo hosts a Smash tournament, they're probably deathly afraid of like putting the mic in front of the winner. So how'd that go? And someone just goes off and like just says some real stuff.
There's definitely room for Nintendo to like be concerned about like getting more heavy-handed in that, because of they're kind of like walking on eggshells, because there is, as you said, there's been history of incidents, not just in FGC, but even in the Smash community and stuff.
I would say particularly.
Even as recent as like a certain player getting removed from SmashCon eligibility, the upcoming Smash Brothers tournament, because of history of violence. Yeah. It's like it's like, does Nintendo step in with that? What if they were officially involved with that? Like, how does that look? But at the same time, we know how Nintendo is, especially Nintendo of America.
Yeah,
they have a distinct brand and a messaging that they go for. Yeah, and as long as stuff plays within that set of rules and fits that, they're all for it. Once you veer off from that, that's when I think they get a little bit more trepid. They're like, this is not a good look for us. We don't want to have any involvement in this.
And I think it's a greater thing in general with like esports as a whole. It's just, guess what? It's just like every other athletic association. You look at any other major professional sports, and the stuff we're talking about, which all sounds horrible, this happens all the time in professional, professional sports stuff. So, that is something that comes with any sort of competition, athletics, what have you. Is just like, yes, sometimes you get people who make really poor life decisions while being very good at this particular sport. So it's and I think that's probably what scares Nintendo, because when you're doing directs, when you're doing E3, when you're doing even Comic-Con stuff, like Nintendo has 100% absolute control over what they're showing, who's talking, yada yada. Like, when Nintendo's doing stuff at E3, they have their little, Elysium style stage up above everyone else from the show floor, because they don't want anyone to even be on camera in the background anymore during their Nintendo Treehouse Live events. They want that absolute amount of control. And when you dive into like anything competitive, when you're dealing with people who are the best at what they do when in a competition like thing, this stuff will come up, because they're not employees of Nintendo and stuff like that. They don't have the absolute control over every single aspect of esports and Smash Bros. And this is why I think it's going to be hard for Nintendo to do anything extra than what they've already done. And this is why I kind of shy away from. I don't think Nintendo ever will get too involved. If they do, it'll be glacial. At the glacial pace.
Yeah.
I mean, a perfect example, Nintendo's, I think their overall message with the Switch has been games are for everybody. Everyone can play. Literally, if you're super enthusiastic, or if you just want to play some, really, like puzzle games or whatever, mobile style games, that's fine too. It's all legitimate. It's for everyone. Just a couple of months ago, there was a 12-year-old girl who bodied one of the best players in Smash Ultimate, and the community initially, much of the community tried to bully her out of the scene because she was a 12-year-old girl, and that's just not okay, apparently. Thankfully, she had a lot of supporters, more supporters than bullies, who convinced her to stay in the scene. But stuff like that happens. It's like that flies directly in the face of their messaging. Gaming is for everyone except 12-year-old girls if you're playing Smash Bros. Ultimate and you're good at it. That's nonsense, and they don't want to be associated with that crap. You know?
Yeah, companies have done a better job of like speaking out against that and trying to like use their kind of like muscle to tournaments be like, we don't stand for that either, and you need to do something about it. But as you pointed out earlier, there's a long history of this, and it's problematic, and like that's one of the many reasons that you both have illustrated why, especially Nintendo, who, as you said, loves so much control, will probably always prefer to do their own style of tournament events where that's where they get heavily involved with some kind of prize and stuff like that. And they will like be like on a sponsor level of something like an Evo because Sony's involved, like all these other big companies are involved with this on a sponsor level. We're okay with that, but going beyond that level of commitment and involvement, I think we're never going to see that from Nintendo.
Nah.
I don't think they're going to like work with the fighting game community on that level. And this their long history of like before these Smash games came out, just like the history of Melee specifically, how kind of like the friction between that.
Yeah.
I think they saw what it is, they called it what it is, and said, no, we're not going to be involved in that, and that's just the way it's going to be.
And I think you know better than anyone. I think all of us probably here know how hard it can be just to work with Nintendo, like just from an E3 standpoint or coverage standpoint, because they're so selective about how they want info and stuff getting out.
We know
so like
full well.
Even when it comes to like and yeah, there's a lot of baggage that comes with dealing with certain YouTube personalities as well. So what do? They make their own, and kind of just like we have our own controlled. Narrative, stuff like that. Even though, like I feel like people like certain other people, like I'll shout out. Gerard's a great guy, and he's done stuff for them, and that's great. But it's like you can't, you never know if you're always going to get someone like Gerard, who's a wonderful guy. You don't always know if you're gonna if that's what you're gonna get, because you don't want to like have a meet and greet with like Reggie, and then the next week something blows up, terrible. They're probably afraid of that, which I think bleeds probably into the esports stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for every Gerard or she says, there's a PewDiePie or a BitBlock or whatever that you just like. You don't want to be associated with on a period, I would say, but especially on a corporate narrative level. And that's just, I think there are too many risks involved.
I definitely
for
agree.
Nintendo to want to even think about that.
So it's really cool in the end. I think it's really cool that Smash was grand finals.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool that that happened. But as far as like Nintendo getting more involved, I don't think so, and I don't think we're ever going to see like announcements at Evo from Nintendo.
Oh yeah, that like everyone like, hey, where's the announcement? Like, is it
People kept
over?
saying,
is it
DLC
over?
number 4.
Honestly, I think
on.
if anything, trying to put Smash at grand finals was maybe a outreach from Evo to be like, we'll make you the headline game. Would you? Everyone else announced stuff. Like I think they were hoping that hero footage or whatever that they like went up right before Evo. Mm-hmm. I think they were maybe hoping maybe that can be something we debut at Evo. But Nintendo was just not game for it at all.
Yeah. That's. I don't think that's ever.
I honestly do think that because Street Fighter's always been the last game, always. And this year was the first year it wasn't Street Fighter.
Which is really... The fact that Smash got that honor is a big deal.
Yeah, it was Smash. And I honestly think it might have been a bit of an outreach to Nintendo to be like, would you like to use Evo as an announcement platform like everyone else? And I think Nintendo was just like, yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
And it could also be, to be a little bit more optimistic, it could just be a this year thing. Like they already have their plans for Smash mapped out for the whole for the fighter pass for this time. And... maybe a future Evo. It still could have been what you said, Simmons.
Yeah.
But it's for future years. Like, hey, we understand you have nothing for this year, but we'd like to keep giving you the spot because please consider us down the line. Like, if we do a season 2 of Smash DLC or something like that, consider us as part of your plan.
And you look
time.
at it like, look at the numbers that it got this year at Evo. Maybe that's what they needed. Maybe they needed to see the numbers before they're, and maybe next year they'll be like, okay, because because maybe they won't have the same venue to announce new DLC characters like they did this year, next year.
Well, and money talks. I don't see how there's any universe in which Smash Ultimate is not the next for next year, the grand finals game, the last one as well, unless like by some weird miracle Street Fighter 6 is out by then, but it's not going to happen. So because money talks and stream viewer numbers talk, and I just don't see how anything other than Smash Ultimate could take that top spot again.
Definitely agree. Well, that was some good Evo talk. Glad you both enjoyed your time there.
Of course.
And again, watching it just on Twitch, they were really great. Top 8s and some really good grand finals.
Did you happen to catch Sam Show?
Yes, I saw Sam.
So
I saw
good.
Sam Show. It was amazing.
It was fun.
That game is such a pleasure to watch.
It is.
It's so fun to watch.
There
that.
was so much fear going into that it was just going to be 7 Genjiros, and it wasn't. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Which made the top 8 for Sam Show so much better, because like I like Sam Show, and I was like, oh, I'm going to watch this. I'm going to be excited for this one, and then like everything leading up, everyone around the show floor was like, just going to be 7 Genjiros. It's just going to be Genjiro, and it wasn't.
Nice.
Thank God. I was like,
yeah.
And like every time someone would come up with counter pick Genjiro, I was like, yeah, awesome. Galford, awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. We did talk about some like problematic stuff in fighting game community and like just in general, but like also such great moments from this Evo that highlight like the great side of the fighting game community and the fighting game series. The Dragon Ball Fighters grand finals, Goichi finally beating Sonic Fox in that grand finals, and him the minute he won, Goichi just breaking down and crying, and Sonic Fox just like embracing him and stuff, and like just hugging him and being like so supportive of that. It was just
and Arslan Ash.
representing Pakistan,
great.
and like just that moment is like a very powerful moment for them. And then just seeing him trying, like you could see like just trying to contain that emotion. It's just.
And I have to say,
Well,
it is important to note that there's a lot of goodness in the FGC as well. And I have to say, I was really worried for Arslan Ash when he, forgive my ignorance, but when he did his religious,
before,
and which he should do. That's totally fine. But I was really worried, especially in today's political climate, that people were going to start booing him or something, and they didn't. Everyone clapped. I would say the applause got louder when he did that, and so that's representative of some really great people in the FGC.
I was just like wondering if like, because I knew exactly what he was doing, and I know you're always supposed to bow towards Mecca, and I was almost wondering, like my whole thing was like geographically, what direction? My whole brain was like, for like literally like 10 more minutes, I was sitting there thinking like, where are we sitting in this arena? Which direction are we facing? And I'm just, because I thought it was a really...
you thought you might have a moment of confusion?
No, I was confused because I was like, man, I know what he's doing. That's a really cool gesture. What direction am I looking? Because you wind and turn, you go around a big oval and stuff like that. So I was just kind of like, man, I wonder like what direction, is that towards it? I was like, I don't know. To me, that was a really cool gesture.
Yeah.
And in my geographical brain was just trying to figure out where I was sitting at the moment after it happened, because I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
The only tournament I missed was Blaze Blue.
I didn't see that one either.
I didn't either.
So came in right at the start of Street Fighter, saw Tekken, and then you still saw Smash. So Sam Show, Soul Calibur, those were all good. I was really far away watching the Goichi final at Dragon Ball, so I actually didn't see what happened on stage. I was so far back watching.
Oh yeah,
so I actually did not see what happened between Sonic Fox and Goichi.
Oh gosh,
after
like
it ended.
I
was just like Goichi won. I was like, oh wow, Goichi. I guess he got it. Because I'm like, this is like a. If you're a hockey fan, if you're not, I apologize. Like a Kings and a Blackhawks moment, where the LA Kings and Chicago Blackhawks. There was like a couple years where they were like back and forth between winning Stanley Cups,
right?
And it was like, whoa, like that. To me, that's what's going on here. Like Sonic Fox and Goichi are just kind of back and forth on this stuff.
Yeah, like great rivals and stuff, but also shows that like even like in the Pokemon sense, we were talking about rivals earlier, like versus being dickheads to each other versus like. Actually, we're building a camaraderie here. Even though I really want to beat you, but we're still really good friends and stuff.
Being so
I like that more in real life.
Yeah.
I like the jerk kind of villain or like rival in games but I wouldn't want to ever have like a like a rival like that in real life, because that would be toxic. But I do love that when top level players are such good sports and embrace each other and shake hands and congratulate each other.
Yeah,
That's great.
and as someone who worked in like I said, I worked in education field for like 15 years. The most important thing what's the most important thing to learn how to lose gracefully, because that's the thing a lot of people don't know, and it's like, and you do see it at Evo, usually with the top 8 players. A lot of times it's like they know how to lose gracefully
and win gracefully
and winning, of course, winning gracefully too. Yeah, I should always mention that. Like, don't be like Gary in Pokemon. To bring it back to Pokemon, don't be like Gary. Be like whatever he was.
Be like How.
How?
Yeah, there you go.
I was gonna say Howie Mandel, but I'm like, I know that's not what he was.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's gonna wrap it up for us for this episode of Friend Code. The only last thing I want to say is, like, I haven't been to Evo in years. I stopped going to Evo before they changed the Sunday structure to having it like that. Mm-hmm. So used to, when you're talking about, you can't get stuff on Sunday, I also want to say, like, no, Sunday used to be, it was the same place, same venue, just like go in there. Now it's like, I've not been since they've done that.
You should go just for the
1 year I'll have to go back and just check that out for the finals experience. Probably when they do a refresh, when like the newer versions of like the existing games come out on top of like Smash, will be a great year.
And that's what I've been telling a lot of people. Like, yes, Guilty Gear got announced, which was awesome. And yes, Grand Blue got a release date in February, but I'm like, for the most part, I don't think you're going to see a lot of. I think we're going into a little bit of a winter with fighting games, where you're going to get season passes and DLCs, but there's going to be a little bit of a waiting period before you see Tekken 8, Street Fighter 6. Obviously Smash, whatever. If they ever do another Smash,
I kind of hope they just keep.
I'm fine with
Ultimate.
Just keep making Ultimate. So it's like, we're getting close to that next gen. So I think next year, it's. Maybe depending when Guilty Gear comes out, but like you're not going to see brand new games in Evo next year. I don't think. I think.
I don't think
it's going to be these games again.
I would be largely inclined to agree.
Depending on what happens with Grand Blue, maybe.
Yeah.
Woo, Evo, good stuff. Always love Evo time, and then it's like, gonna be another. I mean, there's obviously tournaments in between, but like Evo is Evo. It is like the Super Bowl of the fighting game community. But I want to thank you both for joining me today. Talking about Pokemon, talking about Game Boy, talking about Evo here.
Thanks for reminding me of how old I am.
Yes,
that's not me. That's Game Boy doing it, and our patrons and stuff writing those questions. Which I want to thank all of you who submitted questions for Friend Code. If you'd like to submit a question for consideration for a future episode of Friend Code, you need to be a $5 and up patron. The week that we will be recording, I will make a post on Patreon calling for your submissions. I'll also let you know what we'll be talking about on the episode as well. And if you're a $5 and up patron, you are also part of the early access tier, where you get this episode and episodes of many of our other shows early. If you're a patron, you'll be watching this on Sunday. If not, you get it on Tuesday. And regardless, even if you're just watching this, thank you for your support. And before we go here, any thing you want to say, like anything you want to give a shout out to before we wrap up here?
Oh, man.
Anything you're working on? Anything cool like that?
Well, I will say that GameXplain we've really been shoring up our new Nintendo Switch content. Basically, one of us, Steve, the Redbox Switch. He was able to get a hold of one like immediately.
This is the refresh with the
refresh Switch, not the new Switch. Yeah, the refresh Switch, and so we've been doing a ton of videos on like load times and performance. Like I think we just did one comparing the Korok Forest and Breath of the Wild. On the original
good
Switch
place. Yeah, that's a great spot. Yes.
Yeah, so and we haven't seen too much of that content elsewhere, so I would shout out that content for sure. Yeah, so if you're interested in the revised Switch and how or if it's performed better,
excellent,
go check that out.
Nice.
Yeah.
And where can people check your stuff out?
You can find me on Twitter, just my name, Ash Paulsen, ASHPAULSEN. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at that name, also on GameXplain, although I do a little less content than the other guys right now because I have a separate kind of full-time job. GX doesn't pay the bills, so I got to focus on that too. But you can find me at all those places, and if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see a lot of stuff about video game music and dogs and lots of pictures of my dog and video games. Just, it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
So, yeah.
What about you, Simmons?
So I run youtube.com/YoVideoGames. Obviously you can see me on the weekends at Maximilian Dude stream, Maximilian_Dude. I stream on twitch.tv/AssistMeDoom, all one word. So those where you can find me online, and you can come hang out and talk. And of course we have a YoVideoGames podcast. If you want to hear me talking more about a lot of more Nintendo stuff and general like Evo stuff as well, because I think you and I both probably just had a lot of discussion about
and tweeted a ton about Evo.
Too. So that's where you can find me. YoVideoGames, and assist me Doom on Twitch. So thank you.
Nice. Well, thank you once again, and until next time, everybody, may the way of the hero lead to the Triforce.